Good evening. We're going to call to order the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Wednesday, August 29th. First thing on our agenda is a special permit for 154, 156 Northborough Road. The applicant has requested an extension in which the next hearing date shall be continued to sometime in September with a decision timeframe extended to October 11th, 2018. I think the main thing for us here would be to confirm our meeting date for September so we can fill that in, and then I'd accept a motion to grant the continuance. I think
And extension, you have to do that.
grant the continuance and then grant the extension. I think right now, I have the 19th of September down as our kind of regularly scheduled meeting. Does that still work for everybody?
That should be fine.
Yeah.
That be good?
Yep, good. I don't think that gives me enough time, if someone should come in with a new application from now until then, doesn't give me enough time for advertising, I don't think, I don't know. But just so you know that, they'd have to be put off till October.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. All right, do I have a motion from somebody to grant the continuance to meeting held at September 19th at 7 p.m.?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Paul will second. And vote, all in favor? Everybody approved? And do I have a motion to extend the decision timeframe to October 11th, 2018?
So moved.
Paul, second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Who, first,
Paul, and then Andrew. Okay, so we have, with that being taken care of, and our next item being 22 Main Street not able to occur for another couple of minutes, I would entertain a motion from the board to move forward the approval of meeting minutes for February 26, 2014, March 26, 2014, April 1st, 2014, June 25th, 2014, and July 14th, 2014. Do I have a motion to move those forward so we can vote on those now?
So moved.
Second? David, second. All in favor? Okay. With that, I want to open it up to Aldo, Town Council, to explain the reason these minutes are on our agenda and what we are accomplishing here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and thank you for advancing this. The reason for that, in great part, was because of my unavailability later in the evening, and it's very compelling that I be with you to advise you based upon an Attorney General order, which we need to comply with this evening. In that regard, as you are aware, the Attorney General issued a letter and order dated August 1st, 2018, received by my office on August 2nd, and the order is an instruction to create a clear and discernible record of minutes for the Zoning Board of Appeals consideration as it related to several sets dating back to 2014. The overall issue is timely preparation and approval of minutes of meetings, particularly related to those 2014 meetings. Handwritten notes or draft minutes must be timely converted to final draft for the board's consideration of approval for filing and posting for the public's information. Minutes, even in draft form, must be of sufficient detail for the public at large to have a precise understanding as to what occurred at a particular meeting. Timely and timely manner under state law means within the next 3 public body meetings or within 30 days, whichever is later, unless good cause is shown for delay. Now, let me point out to you that there is no one in this room who was responsible for the delay in approval of those minutes It was clearly, by our review and investigation, an unintended ministerial shortcoming and a change of personnel that occurred at that time several years ago. That's what created the issue. Current staffing, from everything I have been able to determine, and improved procedures, we believe will ensure that this will not occur again. So, in effect, timely approval of minutes is important. These got caught at a time when there were cover personnel, change in personnel, and written notes never became final minutes, and in some cases, there were no minutes, and they had to be somehow created for your consideration. Now, the other issue is the fact that there currently is only one sitting member before us tonight who was there at that time. And this becomes an administrative and a ministerial matter that has got to be addressed no matter what. So the best legal way and administrative way to do this is to have that particular member, Mr. Drapanos, in conjunction with your principal administrative assistant, and I'm going to ask you to verify these things, verify that, one, Mr. Drapanos has reviewed all the minutes, and he has actually taken the time to review all of the minutes, of which he was at least present, if not participating. And your principal administrative assistant has, in fact, utilized abundant resources to distill down minutes so that they are properly considered, posted, and made available to the public, as is expected under the open meeting law. So once Member Drapanos verifies the accuracy of the minutes of the meetings he attended, in conjunction with a verified accuracy by your current principal administrative assistant who created the text, then those minutes will be available for your consideration and vote, and you can act. Remember, all you're doing is you're verifying to get those minutes as a part of the public record. And there's absolutely no other way to do this except for the way I just explained. Does anybody have any questions? Then I'm going to ask, Paul, have you had occasion to review all sets of minutes that have been created, and do you believe that they are a fair and accurate representation of what occurred?
Yes, I've had a chance to review them, and yes, I think they're accurate.
And Karen, let me ask you, you've had a long opportunity to evaluate and create minutes, and based upon what you created, are those fair and accurate of all of the information that was available to you?
Yes, they are.
All right, on the basis of those verifications, your board can consider to act.
Can we also mention that in the Attorney General's letter, they mentioned a February 2nd meeting that did not occur, to verify that we looked and...
Absolutely, absolutely. You can also indicate, as a matter of this record, because we'll be sending off to Attorney Manganaro at the Attorney General's office a verification that was done. Your other determination relative to the non-existence of those minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, like in that Attorney General letter, I think some of the dates were just wrong. But then in the conclusion of the letter, I think they had the dates accurate.
Okay.
As far as when I went back to look, that there was another date in there. I think they were just, I think it was like a typo in the
They
Attorney.
were
I mean,
Scrivener's errors. They're
Yeah.
typographicals, but the intent was clear, and the minutes that have to be approved are clear.
Right, so
And-
the minutes and the dates of our minutes that are provided here are the correct dates and the accurate.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes that have been prepared of the meetings of February 26, 2014, March 26, 2014, April 1st, 2014, June 25th, 2014, and July 15th, 2014.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye? All in favor?
I want to, if I can, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank first Paul Drapanos for the amount of time that he expended to verify this at my request. He's a citizen volunteer. You're all citizen volunteers. You do this because you love your town, and we thank you for that. And I also want to thank Karen Finelli, who had to go through countless hours of review and determination to get and distill down some form of minutes that are discernible, so that the public knows what happened during those meetings in 2014.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, Thank you for the audience for the indulgence of letting us move that forward. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 22 Main Street. Karen, if you could read the notice.
Mr. David Parry, 22 Main Street, Southborough. The Board of Appeals of the Town of Southborough will hold a public hearing in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room of the Southborough Townhouse, 17 Common Street, on Wednesday, August 29, 2018, at 7:05 p.m. with regard to the petition of Mr. David Parry, 22 Main Street, Southborough, Mass. The petitioner is seeking a special permit to construct a front porch, which will encroach into the required setback 5.4 feet. Relief is requested pursuant to Section 174-19A, states that the Board of Appeals may authorize an extension of a non-conforming structure if it finds that the criteria of the Section 174-9E are met. A copy of the application may be reviewed at the Office of the Building Department located at 9 Corderville Road, Southborough, Mass. during normal business hours. Craig Nicholson, Chairman.
Yep, so I'll open it up to Mr. Perry to make his presentation.
Thank you. Yes, my name is David Parry.
Microphone.
Sorry, do I have to hold this?
Yep.
Okay. Is it working? Yeah. Okay, my name is David Parry. I live at 22 Main Street. I've been there 36 years. And I need a special permit from you in order to solve two problems of functional obsolescence, which is actually quite common in the area, because my house was built 150 years ago, 100 years before zoning, and therefore is a pre-existing non-conforming structure in that it already goes very slightly over the front yard. Now, let me just jump back a bit. Here's the house. Let's go to the locus right here. And there's the house, 22 Main Street, in the pink. Here's Main Street. There's the railroad. There's school. There's Lattice Commerce. It's right there. It's it's almost an acre. It's in a half-acre zone, but it's almost an acre. It has a very large house, 5 bedrooms. And I've shown here the same plan, same locus plan, but I've colored all the other pre-existing non-conforming structures in this historic neighborhood. All the other pre-existing non-conforming structures, and you'll see over 62% of them are non-conforming. Why is that? Because they were built 100 years before zoning, that's why, or 150 years before zoning. So, they're non-conforming in terms of side yard, front yard, both. I won't go through them all, but there's some of them are right on the lot line. So, the front and the side. Some of them are slightly non-conforming side or front. Oh, I think I gave you a plan showing this. Anyway, it's just to show you that what my condition is normal. It's not abnormal, it's normal. And my request to you is really de minimis, because the proposed extension further into the front yard and side yard beyond the minimum is only 1.4 feet in the front yard and 2 feet into the side yard minimum setback. I'll come to that in a minute. So anyway, so that covers that, just to show it's a normal condition, and other houses are way more non-conforming than my house is and will be if you approve it. So here are floor plans. I'm sorry, there's no easel, so I was stuck with putting them on the floor. Maybe I should go around here. And so that side is the existing, and this side is the proposed. So we got the site plan down there, portion of the site plan, the floor plan of the ground floor of the building, and the elevation of the building existing. And over here, same thing, the site plan, the floor plan, and the elevation. I'll come back to that in a minute. So let's go to here's the existing condition. You see the house here. There's a front door there, hidden by those 2 trees, with a very small front porch. And that's shown, by the way, in pink. It's that thing right there. You see that bit of pink? That bit of pink right down there. There are 2 existing porches, the front porch and the side porch, and they're shown there, 2 bits of pink. 2 bits of pink here, do you see? And 2 bits of pink there. They're existing. And so, okay, there's the front door, and there's the side porch. Now, what are the colors on the plan? Pink are porches, so there are two existing, one there, very small front one, and a side one. And when you look up the elevation, you'll see there's the front one, there's the side one. Blue is the hallways. Blue, and you see they're disconnected, and there's the kitchen in yellow. Okay, so the first problem is with the hallway. You see that hallway used to come in the pink, through the porch, into the blue, and it continued into the blue. But someone put a bathroom there. You need a bathroom, but I mean, they put a bathroom right in the front hall. So as a consequence of that, this door's never been used since I have been in the house. It's covered in plastic. And so, it's just functionally obsolescent. There's a stairway, a main stairway above it, which, above the bath here, starts there and goes up, which is basically unusable. And so that problem, you see the two disconnected portions of blue, can be solved by adding blue to the side, the right-hand side. So you come in the front door, you come in that pink into that blue, and you turn right into more blue, more hall. It leads you back to the central portion of blue. So that's a continuous open hallway with no walls. So that's the functional obsolescence of the front door solved. The second problem is the kitchen. There it is. It's the smallest room on the ground floor, and it's way too small for a house of 5 bedrooms. So what the proposal here is to push it out, if you see what I mean, that area of blue, yellow rather, becomes that area of yellow. It becomes the biggest room on the ground floor rather than the smallest. It gets pushed out into that area of pink. If you see what I mean, it goes there. So I got the dotted pink. Under the dotted pink is a like filled-in porch. So that front hall, that side hall there, is under a porch roof. That bit of kitchen's under a porch roof. You see, so let's go down here. So that bit of blue is under that bit of roof, do you see? And that kitchen is under that bit of roof. So it looks like a porch. So we solve the blue and we enlarge the yellow. So it's 2 problems solved. But to make it workable and to make it look nice, which is very important, obviously, we need looks much more attractive if you have a front porch across the whole front, a wraparound porch. Because the existing porch is just too small. It's not designed to sit in, it's designed to stop the rain. And so, to have chairs on it, a wraparound, you can't have a wraparound where you can't sit in the chair. You need a wider, so that wraparound porch has to be wider. It's 1.4 feet wider. It's not a gigantic amount wider. It's de minimis. It's just a little bit. So it looks decent, and you can have a chair there. Makes the house look more attractive. And then, so you got front porch wraparound. Those 2 porches are filled in, and there's a very small porch here added at the right-hand side, and that one will extend just 2 feet into the side yard, minimum side yard. So it's very important to realize, that porch already, the house is already non-conforming, and that will be slightly more, 1.4 feet more to the front, and this will be 2 feet into the side yard. So that's all I'm asking for, 1.4 feet and 2 feet. So I think I've done all that. Anyway, so what will it look like in reality? This is what it looks like now. Now this house was built 7 times over in the town by the same builder, 150 years ago. And here's an example on Middle Road, which actually happens with a little bit of adjustment by me in pencil to be more or less what I'm proposing. You see, it's the same house, painted white instead of yellow.
Excuse me, Dave, could you move the lower one so we can see the pictures that you're...
Right, okay.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so you see there, front porch, side porch. Well, this house has the front porch all the way across the front, all the way across the front, down that side, across the side, and stops at, actually it's not a wraparound, it actually cuts off at both corners. Mine actually wraps around that corner, and they're on the other corner. So the only difference here would be a wrap around that corner, wrap around that corner. That actually is a room in there, but I've penciled it in to make it look like a full-blown porch. So this proposal here is that pink is a legitimate porch. So you see there's a lot of new porch there. Okay, I think that's about that. So I spoke to most of the abutters, and not quite all of them, but most of them. I think some of them have submitted letters to you. And I went to the Historical Commission, and they were happy with the proposal insofar as it affected a historic house, a modification to an existing historic house, which makes it agree to the basic historical design issues they are concerned about. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Well, let's see. Is there any, do we want to talk first? We want to open it up if there's anyone else in the audience? Anyone in the audience care to speak on this? Okay. Paul, do you have any questions?
Sure. How many square feet is the lot, actually? You say it's an acre?
It's 40 feet, it's like 38,000 square feet.
Use your mic, Mr. Craig.
Oh, sorry, about 38,000.
Okay.
It's required to be half an acre, 25,000.
So, other than like aesthetics, what's the hardship here that you're looking to get relief for?
Well, I need to solve these two problems of obsolescence. I mean, the house has a dysfunctional front door and hallway and a kitchen which is way too small. I don't have to prove a hardship under a special permit. That's a variance, but so those are the issues I'm trying to solve. I'm trying to solve a problem of functional obsolescence, which decreases the value of the house, along with, it's a common problem. So I'm trying to solve it in a way which maintains the attractiveness of the building.
On the side elevation, you already encroach over it's already non-conforming, correct?
In the front, it is.
I thought you said the side elevation it is also.
Well, it will be. You see, let's look at the side. There's the existing side of the house here.
Yep.
The zoning line is there, 15 feet, so it's just conforming on the side. But when you add that small side porch, it goes 13 feet, 2 feet over. There's the 2 feet. In the front,
So you're not currently over the line.
no, not on the side.
And so I see that's a porch, and what's that? Is that a closet?
That's when you come up those steps, you have a porch, you open a door,
Yeah.
and you come into a very small hallway where you can hang up your coat and then enter there, which allows you to go down to the basement, or up or down those side stairs. Now the front, here's the zoning line here, this dotted first zoning line. The second line is the existing main building, the big black building, and here's the porch, 25'6", so that's over the front already.
So you're looking to expand your kitchen.
Yes.
Is the part that's going to go over the line on the side, is that necessary for the expansion of the kitchen?
Well, you need a side access for utility men and so forth, so they don't have to come through the front door and traipse all their dirt. I mean, it's a side access to allow them to, come in and go down the utility hallway and up the side stairs. That's the purpose of it. So you don't use the front door every day. You use it for, more formal occasions.
And that second door that you find necessary couldn't be put on the front elevation there?
Well, we have a door on the front. We have a front door right there.
Mm-hmm.
You see, just like now, we have a door there and a door there. That will be maintained. There'll be a door there, which is there, and a door there. It's simply moving that door to there, slightly out, 2 feet into the side yard out. So we maintain the we maintain that aspect of the house, front door, side door.
Well, I mean, I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but I question that side encroachment, and then the front encroachment, likewise, I mean, you could, again, that's just purely for design purposes. That does not having a front porch does not cause you to be able to do or not do what you're trying to accomplish there.
Yes, that's perfectly correct. But,
I mean, you could even put a porch, off the kitchen where it wouldn't be encroaching anywhere, correct?
Well, I can't put I can't put a porch there because the roof would be too low. It's already coming down, so I can't add a porch there. You'd hit your head on the eaves. But I mean, the point of doing this is to make the house look attractive. I don't want to end up with an ugly house, and nor do the neighbors. So it would end up looking like the house on the right there.
Well, that's understandable, but again, I'm saying I know what you're trying to accomplish here by changing your floor plan and making the kitchen larger and the such. But, I mean, I personally think you could do that without, certainly without encroaching on the side and possibly without encroaching in the front. I think that's purely for aesthetics, and that's just my opinion and comments. I'm good.
Hi, Mr. Perry. I had a similar sort of question, but I was just wondering, would you do the project if you didn't put the porch on?
If I didn't,
Would you do the project if you didn't put the porch on? You've been living with this for 30-something years and
Yeah.
not using your front door, which is kind of unbelievable, so I appreciate what you're trying to do. I was wondering also about the connection between the porch and the interior renovation with the kitchen and the hall. Would you renovate the kitchen and the hall if you couldn't do the porch?
would I renovate the kitchen?
It
and
would
the hall?
solve your
But my-
functional
I-
obsolescence.
I mean, I can only do that. I mean, I could leave the front, this funny little front, cut the two tree down. I could leave the front. I have to cut the two trees down. Those two trees have to come down because this extension of this blue, it comes into that tree. I could not build that pink and simply live with that pink, but it would kind of look stupid because, you know, this piece will be across there and come out at you and end there abruptly, you know, just before the front wall of the house. You'd end up with not just that, but the return towards you. So it would look very odd. It wouldn't be in character with the neighborhood. I mean, it is aesthetics, but aesthetics are really important, you know. That's, people look at houses.
Thank you. I appreciate the photos that you sent as
Okay.
well, just to see what you're trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I had probably similar questions. So just let me understand,
Mm.
the porches, like, I think what you were saying there is where that proposed hall extends, you'll have essentially a porch roof over that?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly, yes.
And is it the same thing with expanding the kitchen, that because it's flat there, but because you would have a porch roof
Yes.
there, you'd actually bring the room out
Yes.
underneath that
Yes.
new roof?
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm not touching the side porch structure at all, other than extending it to the right. I'm
Right.
simply pulling the kitchen into it.
Okay.
You see what I
Okay.
mean? So this portion, that dotted portion, it already exists. It's there. You see what I mean? It's there. So that piece of roof, the white pieces of roof are already there. I'm not changing them.
Right.
I'm
Okay,
pulling
so-
the room into it.
So where that's roof right now, essentially, like, you're not extending the lines, if you will,
No.
but the roof, instead of covering the porch, is covering a new area, the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly like this house here.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually sort of, that shouldn't be black. I put pencil over it, but this is actually room. There's a room inside here, a room inside there. Do you see the windows?
Yeah.
So this is not actually a porch, or a porch. That's a porch, but these aren't, but they look like porches.
Right. Okay. I am kind of curious, as Mr. Merrill mentioned, 36 years in the house and you're expanding the kitchen now. It's kind of, it's rather
Yeah.
interesting.
I know it's kind of odd at my age to do this, but you know, it's sort of, as an architect, number one, I've sort of always had this in mind, and you know, I've been pondering it forever. But you know, when I come to sell or give it to my daughter, you end up with buyers who have no notion of what to do. They're simply incapable of understanding how to solve an absolutely fundamental problem. You know, you can't have the real estate people coming in front door and hitting a wall, you know, the bathroom. And so I'm sorry, there's a bathroom here. You know, it needs to be done. You know, and I'm the only person who can do it because, you know, I'm an architect. I know how to do it. And it's going to, every dollar I spend, I'll get out of the house, I hope. Otherwise, it's not worth doing. I'm doing it because of that. I'm being very frugal. I'm doing what's necessary to solve two problems and nothing more. I'm not interfering with kitchen counters or anything like that, you see, just so you understand that. Because there are kitchen counters, you see, they're not changed. I'm simply adding space.
And yeah, I agree, and I appreciate the comparison pictures, and you can pretty easily see you're looking at the same house. Just, I don't know if you can answer this or the building commissioner, but in terms of process, I mean, what you have now is proposed when you have plans, do you go back before the Historical Commission?
No, they don't have any jurisdiction at
Okay.
all. I went before them as a courtesy,
Okay,
because I work with them. I think they're important, and I wanted to run it by them, because I kind of think it's rather insulting to change a historic home without going before them, even though they don't have any jurisdiction, just to get their feedback, that's all.
right, okay. I think that's that.
So I reviewed it, and I think I know how I feel. I'll just kind of explain it. So because this is, you don't need to show a hardship, because it's not a variance, it's just a special permit. And since if there's a single-family residence, you do have some additional protection, I think, under the law. So basically, I think that as to the front setback, because you're already non-conforming, the required is 30, you're existing, you're 25.6, and you wanna encroach a little bit more, right? I think you legally are entitled to the additional encroachment on the front, because the only thing you need to show is whether there's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. I think it's aesthetically more pleasing. One thing that we wrestled with about a year ago in another case involving single-family home extension of a pre-existing non-conforming structure was the additional part of our bylaw that has these requirements about regulating, what percentage cost can be spent on this, that at least we were advised by town council that there's a couple appeals court decisions that you do not apply that you just determine whether it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. So I think that you have a right to the front. I think the side setback is a little different, and I hate to, give you a hard time about 2 feet, but there is an additional that does create a new nonconformity, and I did look at the cases earlier today to prepare for this, and I think the law is that because that aspect does create a new nonconformity, that you do need a variance for that part. So I don't know if it's just 2 feet. If you just bring in the side porch, that additional 2 feet, so you're right at the 15-foot setback, then there's no issue. But I think that you would need to show a hardship. And if you came back and applied for a variance, as to that, I would, I'm not prejudging it, but that's my view. So if you want to respond to it. And one other question is, the abutter at 24 Main Street, to which you're encroaching, did you get any letter from them?
I'm sorry, say again, from?
24 Main Street.
Yeah,
is the
that's my
abutter to
neighbor, 11. Yes, I met with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's her?
I went over it with her, and she agreed with it. She said she couldn't come tonight, but she didn't. I didn't want to ask her for a letter. She's, her father's 91 years old.
Okay.
So, look, I want to just respond to you. I know what you're saying about the variance thing, but really, I don't want this thing about applying for variances. Read strictly. You need to show uniqueness, a soil topography or shape of the lot. That's really a game. It's me saying that I'm different when I'm saying I'm the same. A variance, should not be easy to get. Special permits much less. Intentionally much less difficult to get. Now, why? Look, you say, okay, cut it back 2 feet, but you see, there's no such thing as a door which is like 2 feet. You see, that's the problem. I got 19 to 15, 19.1 down to 15. What's that? What's 19.1 less 15 away from 19.1? 3.9, right? What is it?
4.1.
4.9. I got 4.9. Okay, well, anyway, I really try hard. I could jam it into 4.9. Could I, with a wall thickness of 6 inches?
Well,
4.9.
I guess what I'm saying is, if I'm right on what the
Yeah.
law says, if you came, we would just
Yeah,
consider
yes,
it.
no, I know what you're saying. If you don't feel it's possible, then just vote that way. I'm saying it would work better. It's marginally.
I understand.
Yeah,
what
I
you're
know,
saying.
I know. I understand what you're getting at.
So Andrew has a very good point. You know, another way to look at this is because so many of these houses were built prior to zoning, if you were able to show us that 13 feet side yard setbacks is more of the norm in your neighborhood than not, then we could view it as kind of a de facto, this is the mode of that area, and you're not really changing how it's been applied in that area, as opposed to variance, but we'd need to get some data from you to
Yeah.
show that. And I don't know if that's what actually exists, but I think I would at least take that. I use that in more, urban settings on front yard setbacks of what's actually occurring, because a lot of those properties were built before they did zoning and required, 10 feet
Yes.
or whatever. So that's another option for the porch, the side porch. Again, I think Andrew's correct on the front. It's not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. I like the idea. I'm a huge wraparound front porch fan. I think it would look great, but that's not really the decision we're here. To give you time on this, because we would also need an actual surveyor's plot plan with the proposed structure to make sure that we're approving the siding and the location and the encroachments per that surveyed plot plan. So we're gonna need that anyway, so maybe what we can do is continue this until our next meeting, which is gonna be September 19th, give you the opportunity to get that plot plan with the proposed structure on it to show the actual setbacks, and stamped by a civil engineer, and get the data to show that a 13-foot side yard is actually the norm in your area.
Oh, I see. Now I understand you. So you're saying not go for a variance, but simply show that 13 feet is quite common.
Show the 13 feet is the standard mode of side setback in your neighborhood.
I see. Okay. All right. Okay. Fine. I'm sure I can do that, actually.
So what I would suggest at this point is to take a motion to continue this to our September 19th meeting. And assuming you agree to continue it, and we'll,
Yeah. Are you sure I need a plot plan simply to, I'm simply saying I know I can live with an extra 1.4 feet. I mean, the porch is there. All I need is a little bit more in order to get a chair on the porch. You see what I mean? So.
but it's also the side.
What?
It's also regarding the side.
The side. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
If you want the whole deal, you gotta show the whole deal on the plot plan.
I see. All right. Okay. All right. If that's necessary.
Well put.
I'll do it.
Okay.
All right.
So you're open to continuing this to
Yeah.
September? Okay. Do I have a motion to, do we need to continue the,
You know what, let's see if, when it expires, the application, page 2 right here.
I'll continue that. I think he's
90
suggesting we
days from,
continue.
October 9th.
from July 9th, right?
What is 90 days from July 9th, 2000? October 7th, okay. So you're good, October 7th. Okay, so you're all set, just gonna.
19th.
September 19th.
And 7 o'clock. for the other- the other.
We have 7 o'clock for Northborough Road. Do we want to say 7:15 for this?
Sure.
Okay. Do I have a motion to continue the public hearing of 22 Main Street to September 19th?
Did we determine that an extension is?
Don't need an extension at this point.
I'll
Our
make a
date
motion-
is,
I'll make a motion to continue this to September 19th at 7:15.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Perry. All right. Moving on. Next item on the agenda is 120 Main Street. Karen, if you could read the posting?
Mr. Christopher Gahagan and Miss Renee Murphy, 120 Main Street, Southborough, Mass. The Board of Appeals of the Town of Southborough will hold a public hearing in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room of the Town of Southborough, 17 Common Street, on Wednesday, August 29th, 2018, at 7:15, with regard to the petition of Mr. Christopher Gahagan and Miss Renee Murphy, 120 Main Street, Southborough. The petitioner is seeking a height variance for an accessory structure which exceeds both the height requirement of 17 feet and the number of stories by 2. Relief requested pursuant to Section 174-8.2D4, maximum height 17 feet in 1 story. A copy of the application may be reviewed at the office of the Building Department located at 9 Corderville Road, Southborough, during normal business hours. Craig Nicholson, Chairman.
Okay.
Right. So I'm Chris Gahagan and my wife Renee Murphy, and so maybe we'll give you a little bit of background and then obviously all the questions you want. I purchased a lot in December of 2010. Used to live in Westboro. Basically to pursue my hobby. I've been woodworking and metalworking since the 7th grade. Mr. Souza and Mr. Nebel's woodworking and metalworking shop, and it's kind of the hobby that I've had. And so we found this, I would call it kind of a perfect property in Southborough. We're on just about 3.5 acres, actually 3.48 to be precise. And so the project was really conceived to build what looked like a traditional New England carriage house that had been there since the 1800s, kind of fit with the property. We hired an architect and a builder, came up with a plan, and that was approved by the town, being connected with an underground structure, right? So essentially, that it was ended up being one building that looked like 2 buildings, but there was, I like to use the word tunnel, that was connecting what we call the main house to what is the carriage house, and the distance between them is about 66 feet. So, and if you turn to page 17 of the packet we presented, there's a set of pictures that show the current structure, carriage house, and then there's some aerial views, and so kind of give you an idea of what it is. And the carriage house is the thing on the right, and then the main house is on the left. So anyway, the builder was hired. We started the project, and basically what we had set up with the builder was he would do the structure, and then my first project would be finishing the interior of the shop. So they would get it to rough and plumbing, rough and electrical, the site looking complete from the outside. So construction started in May of 2012. We bought the property. So about 18 months later, construction started, and like any good construction project, 5 minutes into it, you run into problems. So we ran into ledge and significant groundwater. And so lots of additional overruns when it came to dealing with the ledge. We have mitigated as much groundwater as possible in the shop. We have a huge dry well, sump pumps to keep pumping up from I call it my cool manhole cover in the bottom of the shop with a couple thousand gallons of a dry well. But so during the process, the builder said that he would recommend not putting in the tunnel because he couldn't guarantee that we wouldn't get water penetration into the house, into the new carriage house, or even into the tunnel. We were under the impression at that time that he was going back to the town to resubmit plans. We were learning a lot about zoning that we knew nothing about at the time. But essentially, in the middle of 2013, the builder completed his part of it. I was there for the final inspection where they did kind of I'll call it the handover, and we thought we were good. I still had the building permit. So it's kind of slowly making progress over the last couple of years, and then in January this year, I got the opportunity to spend much more time on my project, which was great. But then I realized I'd lost my building card to the winter, so I had it hanging in the winter and over a couple of years, the plastic envelope. So I went to the building department, talked to Mark to figure out how to replace it, and then we found out we were in violation of the zoning rules for Southborough. And that was probably, I think, early or late January, early February. Since then, we've hired a couple of architects. We've revisited, can you put a tunnel in? And everybody's told us that's, given the groundwater and the ledge, not a good idea. We spent a considerable amount of money looking at all the options, right? Looking at above ground structures, a bridge, different ways to connect the 66 feet so we could still be considered one structure. And none of those options seem to be doable financially, and it would just be, the aesthetics would just be, I don't want to use the word destroyed, but there's no good way to put it above ground, making those two things look like one at 66 feet apart. And so that's kind of why we're here today. I think when we looked at the kind of rules, and if we think about the hardship, again, the soil condition for us is we didn't know we had ledge, we didn't know we had this significant groundwater issue. So that's our justification.
And we already spent significant additional cost just to remediate the water situation and break through the ledge to complete the structure.
And the problem is, once we, a little bit, the building is a true post and beam building that was built up in New Hampshire. So the building was actually built, all the timbers were cut. I use the word prefab, it all came down in pieces. And so we were committed. It was already paid for, it was coming. And so there wasn't a bunch we could do. And then we learned, again, when I started to kind of re-engage and realize I didn't have a building card, that we were kind of where we are today.
Can I also add, even from this page, which page is this, 17?
17, yeah.
You can eyeball and see the significant amount of drainage that was implemented. So to the left, in front of the main house, you'll see a French drain. You'll see to the right of the two, stone pathway, old-fashioned stone pathway, you see a little arch and a sewer-ish type structure there. To the right of that, across the driveway, before it starts to slope, you'll see another French drain. Wait, let me finish. And then your eyes hopefully can pick up to the far right, in front of the carriage house doors, another French drain. What you can't see
If you go to the other page, you can see it.
is,
If you go to page, let's see.
well, anyway, what you can't see is, in the
manhole
main
cover.
part is a manhole cover of a huge, what do you call that?
Dry well.
Dry well. And of course, you can't see the pumping. But my point is simply that really wanted to make sure we did this right and addressed those things. And it's the water, beyond the ledge, the water is the biggest concern about trying to complete the project as designed, with what sounded like a cool, doable, feasible initial design now being unfeasible.
So that's that, and then I think Karen is going to read in, one of our neighbors that we share a driveway with, their concern, if you want to read it in, we can address their concerns, is that we're going to split the property into two lots and have two homes. And so I think we can address that both.
Yep, why don't we let
Sure.
Karen read it in? I have here.
You got it handy? Paper's all a mess now. The letter is from Betsy Crowley. Hi Karen, thank you for your help getting my concerns voiced to the board. Okay, let me go down to her letter. Dear Mr. Nicholson and members of the Board of Appeals, I am writing to express my concern about this request for a variance. I live at 116 Main Street and share a driveway with this property. As it stands now, without the required connection to the main residence, this structure is a freestanding 3,200 square foot single-family home with bathroom, bedroom, and garage space. My concern is that approving the existing structure would make it easier in the future to separate the property into two lots with its own house using the existing shared driveway. Is there a page two?
Yeah,
Oh.
just flip it over.
A standalone workshop of this height and size would never have been approved without the proposed connection to the main house. It surpasses both the town's height and size restrictions. It should be connected to the main residence as originally approved by the town, and assurances should be made that it will never be used as a home legally or illegally in the future. Thank you for your consideration. Elizabeth Crowley, 116 Main Street.
Okay, a couple things on that is, first of all, it has never been and is not our intention to have it as a separate home. But more practically, there's just infrastructure reasons. It shares the same septic system, it's on the same water system, it's on the same phone system, internet, et cetera. So it would have to be, all that stuff would have to be dealt with, I think. But even kind of more practically, as I said before, and I've learned a lot with the zoning laws and rules and regulations, the buildings are 66 feet apart. With the 35-foot front setback, they'd need to be a minimum of 70 feet apart, so there'd be kind of no way to separate them. And then on the front, if you look at our, the plot plan, there's not enough frontage on the front of the house to actually separate it into two lots.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah,
Ask that question.
please.
So I'm now a little confused. So are you looking to build something new or to?
Built.
It exists.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, I've been a little confused too.
So the problem is, I built it, and I'm now trying to finish it. What I realized was my building permit had expired, which I didn't realize had expired. And when I wanted to get the building permit to finish it, Mark couldn't issue it because the building as built is non-conforming.
Non-conforming to what was initially approved.
Correct,
Back
'cause-
in like
Because
2012.
initially,
or
it was gonna be a single, because it was connected with a tunnel, it was considered a single
Yeah, the
structure.
The issue is that the intention was to have that
Have a
connected
tunnel.
via tunnel.
No,
They're finding that.
like, I know in the past, we've had some stuff that are like kinda similar. And yeah, if it was, if you connect it, it's, not a separate structure, it's just a whatever. But I understand what you're saying here, that it's rather
We planned to do it, and then.
far away. I've never, I wasn't here for 2000, I've never heard of, of a tunnel. That part I find,
It was approved.
oh, no, I'm not doubting there was I'm just finding that very interesting, because that's kind of interesting, and I guess, I see what you're saying, that you're, whatever, you got a high water table, and it's not gonna,
And
but
I'm sorry to interrupt
you have some type of if there was something, even if it wasn't used, that connected the two, then you say, job done, or,
Well, see, this is where this page 17 is really interesting. And by the way, I think the mindset, the original property had a carriage house, and in the,
Our house is on the original carriage house for the property. The
So the-
Crowleys actually split the property, and where our house sits was the original carriage house for the property. It was torn down, and the previous owners built the house there, so.
so the mindset was, wow, keeping it separate and visually, I don't know, characteristic of New England, whatever, was the mindset, whatever. So to your point on the distance, if you look at 17, it gives you this sense. And here's where, since we found out we were out of variation, out of variance, we spent 10 grand engaging multiple architects and builders to say, what could we do?
Above ground.
And simply put, pretty horrible. Cost being one thing, but you end up, I don't want to even say, but it looked to me like covered wagon type things going across. With endless money, you could probably achieve all things, but this is a pretty big problem to solve.
So you could connect the two versus with a ground walkway that's covered. That might meet the definition of connected,
Bridge.
but
Yeah.
it's the,
No, he's saying a walkway with
Aesthetic, no,
just with like a,
No, it has to be covered and heated. It has to be a livable
Livable
space.
space.
And a basement's, unfinished basement's considered livable space, and that's why a tunnel
Is
works.
that,
I'd like to know where
accurate?
that is in the regulation, because I couldn't find that today.
Mark, is that accurate, as long as it has to be livable? I thought from a couple years ago, someone was trying to do
Like a breezeway.
I thought a breezeway would have been adequate.
Yeah, no, it's got to be, the original plan, if I was here at the time, I probably would have issued a foundation-only permit and then made sure that the tunnel was attached and stuff. It wasn't done that way, and for whatever reason, I actually did an inspection of the house. It's a huge structure, but he has woodworking on the second floor, metalworking on the first floor. It's not set up like an apartment in any way, shape, or form. It's just, it's 3,200 square feet of fun toys, it looks like. So it's just that, unfortunately, I can't give him another building permit because, an accessory structure is 1 story, 17 feet, and this is 2.5 stories and, 30-something feet. So had it been attached, it would meet zoning.
But I guess the question is, why does he need a building permit?
Well,
There's
his building
something
permit
basic that
expired.
I'm-
He pulled the building permit to build this back in
Okay.
2012, And I think he started it, and as a matter of fact, the inside is still in the rough stage, so there's no real drywall on it, there's no real wiring inspection at this point, so it's really in the rough stage. So it's just let the permit expire, which they're only good for 6 months if you don't act on them. So it expired a long time ago, so when he came to renew it, I think, you know, it was just something that we looked at, and we had to, you know, I had to bring it into the board to have you guys take a look at it.
But, like, I'm not recommending that's how it's like to accomplish this, but would a open breezeway suffice?
That would be up to you guys.
Well, I don't, like, you know, like, as opposed to something that's enclosed and heated and habitable? I mean, could it be, I mean, you know, a porch is you know, it's not heated and, you know, enclosed, but it's habitable. I don't know.
It was originally pulled as an attached, okay, so that's why it met the height structure of the primary structure, because it's part of the primary structure. So it was gonna be attached via an underground tunnel.
But would attached via a breezeway, would that, like, suit?
You know, that's something that you guys are gonna have to talk about.
Yeah, so I don't know if that veers into aesthetics, that you could do it, you could have it connected, even if you had pretty minimum walkway and it was covered. But I think you made the point earlier, looking at the picture, it's not the greatest look.
No.
And that makes it feel like we're kind of shoehorning a requirement into saying this is okay. I understand the problem. I
Yeah, there's
also
two things I
stand
want to separate, I also want to separate, I want to respect my neighbor's concerns, and I don't, as we talk about these things, I know her concern is at the forefront, a concern that maybe the property could be split at some point in the future. But I also want to say, I think if she saw a picture or an idea of something that was bridging across, I think she'd have concern with that, just visually.
Would that be visible from the neighbors?
As she drives down, yeah.
We have a shared driveway that goes all, if you look at the overhead, there's a aerial shot, probably.
And is it accurate to say that the first building you see is actually your building in the back as you come down the driveway?
So the first building you see would be the back of the carriage house.
The carriage house, yeah, and then where you actually live is behind that.
And then
Correct.
Okay.
and left of that is, and back to if you look at, on page number 19, the top of it is coming off of Main Street, Route 30, and then it veers left. The Crowley's house is way over here, and then we're here. You can see the aerial shot.
So the Carly's house is to the right of the trees, and that pavement that you see to the right is their driveway veering off.
Right, okay, got it. Just,
Andrew, is it plausible to put a covenants on this, that it's not, like, subdividable for a separate residence?
Well, actually, they make a good point in that their front yard or their front property footage based on their zoning area, Residence A requires 150-foot minimum front street frontage. And they have that now, but they don't have 300 to allow for 2 lots to be there. So that's problem A. And then problem B, with the required rear setback and required front setback of that area, the 67 feet isn't enough to accomplish both.
And
So they would need a variance to split it down in the future. I guess variance, yeah, to split it down in the future if that were ever not necessarily you, but the next owner.
Yep.
You won't be there forever, no offense, but you'll be there for a long time, just not forever.
Could be forever.
So, my impression, I could be wrong, is that, I mean, it doesn't look like there's a realistic,
Excuse me?
it doesn't look like, I accept what you're saying, you don't plan to subdivide, and I think you'd need to go to the planning board to get an approval not required, I think, but anyway.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it wouldn't qualify as an A&R lot for sure. But they, like Craig said, they could come back for a variance to say, in the future, and maybe in the future, there's a precedent to, that would
So
allow for that.
when I was prepared for this, I just completely missed the basic fact that this thing has already been built. I thought, I was very, because I was looking at these, I thought, if
You're looking
these,
at a
if
very
these are
nice-
great
very nice scale
depictions
model.
of what, these are
He
incredibly
put his
good.
car in the driveway.
Incredibly good, but
That's not a stock
So-
car for that
so,
program.
you know, the basic situation is this thing has already been built. It was built 6 years ago. And just the issue is whether you can build inside of it.
But I can finish it. Otherwise, it sits like that forever,
Yeah,
unusable.
so I think that, you know, with that, I think I'd be in favor of just continuing it, that we got enough people lined up here for another thing, and just give some thought to that element of it, and maybe thinking of some practical solution to this. I mean, because what are the options, right? Have this existing structure just sit there doing nothing. Build something that was never really part of the original design. These are not really attractive options. So I'd like to just give some thought to reflect on it and think if there's some more practical solution.
Okay.
I mean, another thought I have is, so if there was a tunnel, like who would know? And then in the future, if you were gonna do something, you could just close in the tunnel. I mean, I don't understand what having a,
So,
like, why
I think
having a
it gets
tunnel
into-
would make this like any
it's-
different.
6 years ago, the building inspector said, I think, if you connect these with a tunnel, then it'll be considered one structure, so the second thing is exempt from the 17-foot height restriction on the accessory.
In your
Exactly.
packet,
I understand.
I think
See.
on
And we may think that's right or wrong, but the fact that it was made and then they relied on it for 6 years.
So, yeah, if you look at page number 6 of what we submitted, it was the actual building, the building permit that we,
Yep.
and then you'll see I highlighted where
Oh,
it actually has it on the building permit that it'll be constructed with an underground tunnel.
right.
So,
I mean, one of the, isn't, your plans show like, office and kitchen and bathroom. If you don't have a kitchen in there,
There's not, yeah, right now it's
it's not a
studs.
livable structure. I mean, I kind of understand, it's like having a barn behind your property. I would think if you don't put it in such a condition that somebody could possibly live there.
I mean, again,
I think a
mean,
kitchen's part of it.
I mean, a covenants can be put on it that it's not a separate residence, it's not rentable, it's not habitable, it's to be, used as a barn workshop.
Yeah, and I think probably the worst consideration than the neighbors would come up with is that it becomes an Airbnb or there's constantly somebody living there, because it would be a great place to, but if you don't outfit it with all those things, I understand the bathroom, but you don't have a kitchen, and maybe that's what you have to do, you have to set conditions.
Yeah, I mean, I think a condition, would that not suffice, or? The other thing is there like a hardship here that, they're supposed to construct a tunnel, but due to high groundwater, that's not, like, feasible?
groundwater and ledge.
Yeah, I mean, I
I-
think there's a
That is
bit
the
of a
hardship,
hardship
I think.
here.
So,
I think we should continue this and just give it some more thought, because there's a lot of other things to get to.
okay. Yeah, I think the things that we want to consider are, is there another option to quote-unquote connect it? Are there,
A zip line.
yeah. They might actually like that. Are there conditions that we can put on it in terms of, building out certain functions within it to ensure that it's limited to the carriage house workshop concept that it was intended to be, even though the plans show kitchen and 2 full baths and essentially very large offices, which could be bedrooms. And I think those are probably the 2
Well,
main things that
I
we
mean, I
would
guess
wanna consider.
technically, if it's on the existing septic system, and the amount of bedrooms is the amount of bedrooms. I mean, you can't be increased, and I don't know what the septic system's approved for.
Well,
I
the
mean, I don't know, but
Chances, I don't know what they approved back then, but I think now, even now, if you show those technically as offices, the Board of Health would probably say, no, they're bedrooms. You need to have a septic system size to accommodate that, so. Yeah. So I think the idea here is to entertain a motion to continue this to the September 19th
19.
meeting. Does that work for you?
Good, yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. And,
7:15?
Well, we got 7:15 already spoken for,
yes, we do.
so we're up to 7:30?
That would be safe.
Okay.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to do that?
I move that we continue the hearing to September 19th at 7:30.
Do I have a second? Paul seconds. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Do you have something for them to sign?
No, because
No,
we're just, we're
they
still
continued.
within the,
Okay. We're still within the timeframe. Good.
yeah.
Okay. How's everybody doing? Are we good on just plowing through? Does anybody need a facilities break?
Well, you could do 97 and then,
Okay.
I'm just checking. I want to be,
Well,
Let's do one more.
I
okay.
think we can do
Then let's,
it's actually only been an hour, so I'm okay. My ice coffee might be-
all right, we will continue moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is 97 Main Street. Karen, if you could.
Quality Framing Contractor, 97 Main Street, Southborough. The Board of Appeals of the Town of Southborough will hold a public hearing in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room of the Southborough Townhouse, 17 Common Street, on Wednesday, August 29th at 7:30 PM with regard to the petition of Quality Framing Contractor Incorporated, 328 Mill Street Extension, Lancaster, Mass. The petitioner is seeking a special permit to construct an additional detached two-car garage for a newly constructed home with an attached two-car garage. This would exceed maximum of 3 vehicles by 1. Relief is requested pursuant to Section 174, 8.2B, 12, private garage or parking for more than 3 vehicles that is accessory to a permitted principal use and on the same lot as such. A copy of the application may be reviewed at the Office of the Building Department, located at 9 Corderville Road, Southborough, Mass., during normal business hours. Craig Nicholson, Chairman.
Okay. Who do we have with us today?
Good evening, Peter Bemis, Engineering and Design Consultants, here on behalf of a Quality Framing Contractor. So this is was the red house, salt box that was on at 97 Main Street, Windermere Drive is located here. The proposed house that's actually under construction right now is located in this position, and the proposal is for this carriage house to be located in this position behind the dwelling. This is the site plan that was part of your packet.
Mm-hmm.
For a locus, I've put on this plan here so that you can see where Windermere Drive is, where Main Street's located. And again, this is a budding property that fronts on Windermere Drive, that's 95. And this is 97, the salt box that was there that's been raised at this point. This lot has been divided into 2 parcels. And this is the one that's under construction now, Lot 2, which is maintaining the existing, or the pre-existing number, if you will, 97. The proposal, again, is this dwelling that's under construction would be having 2 additional garages located at the rear. I'm going to show you what that's supposed to look like. They sent me this plan. It's called Carriage House Plan with Elbow Room. We're not doing the elbow room part. We're just doing the carriage house, which is this. If you looked at this, there's another roof that comes off, and it has another gable going in the back, and it's a lot more extensive. This is basically the view that you're going to see, the 2 doors with the window above. And I believe he's doing all of this lattice work as well. That's basically my proposal.
Okay. You have a question?
Okay, I got a question again that feels so basic, it's like a stupid question, though. This is a 3-car, you're looking for 3, right? 3-car garage? But there's 2
This
doors.
is a 2. I had them send me pictures today, and what they have under construction, we identified as a 2, is a 3. So this 3-car garage under construction,
But it has 2 doors?
but, well, as far as I'm concerned, it has 3 doors. And they're looking for 2 more. So I figured we'd just present this. I know there's one concerned abutter here, so I want to try to address his concerns while I'm here this evening and see if we can
But a
try to get
total
this
of
resolved.
3 cars. right?
There's a total of 3 cars in the existing dwelling under construction. and we're adding 2 more.
Total of 5 cars.
So the petition says 2 additional cars. We anticipated that there was 2 in this dwelling, and then I get the foundation plan from him, and it shows me a short bay located here.
That's 3 cars.
That's 3 cars, right. That's how I see it too, and then he sent me a picture of the site. I said, that's 3 cars.
3's allowed.
So, but I know I have an abutter, and I want to try to address the concerns, and we'll see what we do with our petition.
Okay. All right. Well, let's have the abutter, I'm assuming that's you.
That's why I asked him if he wanted to move before I got started, so he could see.
Well, let's have the abutter speak and give his opinion. You need to come up and use a microphone and introduce yourself and address and everything else.
I have a document that I'll give to you in a moment, but I'll just begin by speaking.
Okay,
That's
could
okay?
make sure the microphone's on for you
Okay.
there.
Is it on? Are you all set?
That sounds like it.
Okay. I do have a handout, and I'll give that to you in a moment. So, good evening. My name is Jack Canzaneri, and I'm here on behalf of myself and my wife, Mary Antonelli, and we live at 95 Main Street, which is next door to 97 Main Street, where the property is that they're discussing. We've lived in that property, 95 Main Street, since December 2003, so about 15 years. And I do, in the document I'm going to give you, I have a question about the burden of proof, and I have a concept that I think it is, and I have a sense from our prior discussion that maybe you'll clarify that for me. I also wanted to note that what Mr. Bemis noted is that the notice is incorrect, that the house has a 3-car garage, that the proposed special permit is for an additional 2-car garage. So that's an inaccuracy to say that the house had a 2-car. It actually has a 3-car garage, and that the 2-car detached garage therefore will exceed the limit by 2, not by 1. So that's that. There's another thing I wanted to say, which is just a side point, which is the owners, the prospective owners of this house are very gracious. I've spoke to them not in the recent time frame, and whether you grant or don't grant this permit has no bearing on our commitment to be friendly, good neighbors with them. I just have potentially a difference of opinion on whether there should be a 5-car garage on a 1-acre lot. So with that, I'm going to give you my document, and then hopefully we don't get distracted by it. And keep talking.
Thank you for using the microphone.
For the
Yes.
record.
Yes, thank you.
And then does Mr. Bemis have one?
I do.
Thank you.
8 copies.
Perfect.
Okay, so I just wanted to start actually with a question, which is my first bullet, which is the purpose of this hearing. I wanted to understand what the purpose of the hearing is. I'm not versed in this proceeding. I did look at the bylaws, and I noted the purpose of the bylaws is to protect and promote the health, safety, convenience, and welfare of the current and future inhabitants of Southborough. So I know this is a special permit. What is that, does the builder have the burden to prove that this will not do harm to my property? How does that relate to that, and this being a special permit? So I began with a question, actually.
So when we're looking at health, safety, convenience, welfare, really, I take that to be really more like, it will be dangerous to put this somewhere. It will block a viewpoint of a road. It'll increase traffic to a point where it's no longer safe to walk on the roads. It impacts wetlands, which will, increase global, those are the sorts of things that I view in regards to that. So we would look at that, but that's also ultimately something that planning board will look at for the site plan approval and in terms of water runoff, and Conservation Commission will look at that stuff as well.
Okay.
So,
And the second thing I wanted to note is that I'm a bit impaired in my ability to fully comment on this because I did go to the planning board, to the assessor's office, and to the building department yesterday to study and get documents, and I didn't see one that showed where this proposed two-car garage would be located. So presumably that is part of what we need to know. So I may be learning that today, but I'm not able to really fully evaluate it other than in the moment. So I just wanted to note that. So with that, I'll go through some of these points. So I already mentioned the correction to the notice. You know, it's a three-car garage that's on the house, and they're proposing to have a two-car detached. So it's exceeding the limit by 2 cars. So that's already been established, and I just wanted to confirm that. I don't know if the word is precedent or pattern, but from my viewpoint, having lived on Main Street for 15 years, I'm not aware of any other house, and maybe you do because you're in the business of doing this, I'm not aware of any other house that has 1 acre, these 2 parameters, 1 acre plus a 5-car garage. I think this would be precedent setting. So then I feel like you're going to be obliged in the future to do it, including for the next lot. That's called Lot 2, Lot number 1. So I think that's a factor. So then in my note here, I noted factors that raise concern that the burden of no harm is not met by the proponent of the special permit for the 5-car garage on a 1-acre lot. So these are factors. These are really questions. I don't yet have a conclusion about an objection or not. I have questions. I do have enough questions that I'm leaning in favor of objecting as the abutter, but I don't have that yet. So the first point relates to lot coverage. So that requires a little discussion. As you know, the red house was on a 2-acre lot, and that house, I looked at the documents and did some math, was, as far as I could see, 1,964 square feet on 2 acres. So if you did the math, that should come to about 2.5% lot coverage on 2 acres. Okay? The new house, as far as I can see from using a ruler, looking at the plans, when you add up the structure that's being proposed, the house, so the detached garage, the 2-car attached garage, plus the house, plus I'm aware that they're going to build a pool. I think that adds to the coverage. Those things, by my math, come to around 5,000 square feet. So you're going from 2.5% lot coverage on those 2 acres to 11.5% coverage on the 1 acre. And part of what I presume is that the other lot, lot number 1, is going to have the same coverage. So 11.
Just to be clear, the 11.5% includes the house that's under construction, the proposed two-car detached garage. Anything else?
And the pool.
Okay.
And the pool.
And that's just lot coverage, not total square foot.
Got it, yeah.
Let me just look at, I have a note that's more detailed. I can be more specific on that. Yeah, around 3,800 for the house. The proposed garage, I think, is around 576. I'm assuming that the pool, I'm understanding it's a lap pool, is around 600. There's going to be some deck around that, maybe not. I come to around 5,000, and that's how I do the math.
Is the pool permitted already?
I don't know.
Okay, but it's planned, as far as you know.
Yes, I'm very clear that there's part of the concept. The builder's been gracious too, and he's been transparent as far as I can tell, and has told me the plan, what the concept is of what they're doing. Except that I don't know where the location of the garage is, other than today looking at that chart from a distance, if it's even on there. Okay, so that's the lot coverage. So 2.5% lot coverage over 2 acres to 11.5% over, and then, my math says that's greater than 4 times the lot coverage. Second consideration I put on my list here is driveway. So I think that there's 5 times greater driveway coverage, so impervious structures that relate to, you know what that means, at least as well, if not more than me, in terms of causes for drainage problems. So the prior house had a 2-car garage. It was front-loading, and it was 70 feet closer to the road than the current house. Their current house has a 3-car garage. It's side-loading, plus the proposed 2-car additional garage that extends, I don't know exactly, but further to the back of the lot. So for each of those, you know, the 3-car garage, you have a driveway that goes from the front of the street all the way much further back, 70 feet farther back. Then you need additional space for turnaround, additional space for planning for snow, and then you have a 2-car garage, which then continues, this driveway then continues on to a 2-car garage that has further turnaround space. They're not gonna just back all the way out. And then snow removal issue. So, so I see that by my estimation as 5 times greater coverage in terms of driveway. So that combined with the 2.5% lot coverage compared to 11.5, those two things combined create a lot more coverage than there used to be. Grade change, number 3. So this is one that is a little bit of a question, but I can tell you how I got what I have here. I am very clear, apart from technical numbers, that 97 Main Street is lower. When you would stand on my property, it would always be lower than mine. The next point, I'll talk about that more, which has to do with the water table, which you also heard about the prior house that was just before you, which also had a high water table. So grade change, by my eye, I feel like it's 4 or 5 feet higher in relation to mine. So my property used to be a little higher, and then it would continue on down. Now, when I look over there, it's actually higher. They've brought in a ton of material to make that happen, truckloads to make that happen. And it, you know, setting aside my interests, you know, I understand that that's probably a good thing to do if you're gonna live at 97 Main. But how that relates to me, I'm not clear, and I'm concerned. So I'm gonna go to the very last page of this document, just to tell you how I get those numbers. I said I think it went from 294 to 301. So I didn't have a document that showed the old levels. So the closest I had was this last page here from the title, what's the one for septic called Title 5? Okay. So see we're in the, in front of you, there's a 294.
I see a 298.
Yeah,
Okay,
look to the left of
294.
there, see the 294? I believe that that's approximately where it was. And then if you look on the garage where it says 301 and you see the 298s, and you see those lines, you know how to read those better than me. I say it's gone from 294 at least to 300, 301 in that range, so it's gone up 5 to 6 feet. I say that visually, without knowing the technical way to read those documents, and then I just sort of surmise that by looking at that document. So the third thing, apart from lot coverage increasing from 2.5% to 11.5%, and the driveway impervious structure being so massively increased by 5 times, is a grade change, which I believe is 5 to 6 feet more. So what does that relate to next is high water table. This is not occurring in a desert. We're not in Arizona. This is a very watery lot. When we do things in the backyard in June or May, and a ball goes over there, we get it, we go from dry, our sneakers are dry, we go over there, our sneakers begin to get mushy, and they used to get mushy, they wouldn't anymore because it's 6 feet higher. It would get mushy, okay? In addition, at times when there's more rain, it would actually pond back there. They've brought in all that material for a reason. They didn't bring in that material that I've talked about just because they like to buy dirt. They did it for a reason. In addition, the septic tank, I believe, is going to be in the front of the house. I surmise that that's because it doesn't perk back there. So there's a high water table in that lot. So you have a high water table which further exacerbates the risks in the context of the grade change, the driveway issue, and the lot coverage issue. I'm gonna mention, I didn't put it on my document here, they've taken down a few trees at the front of the lot. I know that tree removal has something to do with water seepage. I don't know how much it relates to it when it's at the front of the lot, and I'm talking about an issue that it's a back, but it's another consideration. The next thing I want to do is just talk about the pictures. So I have a couple of pictures to show you. So the first picture, on this beautiful blue day this morning, I took, I don't know if you could see the depth, but I'm standing on my property, and I'm taking a picture, crossways to where that house is. So number one, you can see the 3-car garage. That is the 3-car garage. And number two, you can see, if you look to the right of the 3-car garage, the right cavity, whatever it's called, you can see that cement lip or whatever it's called. So we assume that the structure will go an inch or two above that, and then somehow it's going to have to come all the way down to meet my land, which is now below that. My land used to be above. It's hard to imagine because that's so high there. My land used to be above that. So that's why I took that picture, was to show that.
I have another very basic question. So this picture is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And this front part is facing towards Main Street?
No, towards his
Oh,
property, this,
okay. 'Cause-
Main Street's this way.
Okay, I get it. Here's the road. Okay, I got it.
Yep.
So the road's right on the line.
Yeah.
The picture I took.
Yeah, the driveway's
I don't have a pointer.
All right.
The picture I took is, this is the house, and this is my lot, and the garage is here.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to repeat that? I thank Mr. Bemis for using his board, and then I said that I'm coming to the board, I'm saying that the picture that I took depicts the area over here on Lot 2, where you see the 3 garage area. The next picture, that's from a little farther away from my
Yeah.
house, deeper in my lot. There's a maple tree in the foreground with a little blue device that's used to hold down a soccer net. And it's showing you a little bit of the grade issue there, too. So you can see the orange stake in, a little bit in the medium ground in between the tree and the house. So that's the lot line. I've mowed a little bit more lawn than was my share. Gladfully, it's fine, happily. But I understand that that's not my property where that is after that.
Yep.
But I do see a deep, a sharp decline in the grade from there to there, and I wanted to show you that. So, I'm concerned, as you probably know what I'm going to say before I say it, I'm very concerned that they can lawfully, without even having a hearing, have already built this house and done this, and whatever it would do. I don't know who's liable if there's water drainage. Hopefully, there's no water drainage on my property. But now you're in a position to do a special permit. So that's when I think of this burden of proof issue. And I think that and I'm understanding that the builder has a burden to prove that this isn't going to cause harm, and however you would phrase that with technical language. And these things are a substantial impediment that make it imperative that, in my opinion, that you don't issue the special permit until you've been satisfied that the builder has proved that all those dynamics I said, high water table, grade change, driveway, and lot coverage, don't combine to have water dumping on this area here. I also get some water in my basement sometime, and my own septic tank is way in the back of my house, and it's elevated, again, because there's a high water table in this whole area. So I'm concerned about all that being exacerbated by you granting a special permit that would allow an additional 2-car garage with all that additional pavement. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Canzaneri. One thing I want to make sure we're all clear on is that we're not asked to look at the existing house that's under construction. All we're looking at is the impact of the additional 2-car garage. So as much as these are all important things and things that add to the burden that they have to take into account in a grand scale to do this, a large part of this has already kind of been calculated and run through to get the building permit and the site plan approved originally. So that would have been the planning board that heard that and agreed that these slopes and this drainage plan and everything else was sufficient to protect your property in addition to make it safe for this property to be built the way it is. So now we're just looking at the additional driveway and the additional coverage of the lot from that two-car garage, which we do get back to this technical thing that your application's wrong and we can't approve it as it is anyway.
Which is why I wanted to hear what the abutter had to say, because, I mean, I have two options. Obviously, I can withdraw without prejudice and move forward and then re-advertise and come back again and take all of that time to do that. I think I can address the abutter's concerns. I think putting a landscape buffer between the two properties and then showing him that the fill is not indeed as much as he's estimating it to be. The contours that are shown on there, his lot's about 300, and we're 301 with the finished floor of the garage. So it does appear to be drastic at this point because it's in the rough scale, but by the time it's going to be done, it won't be, and that water is all going to be shed away from his property and not going to be directed onto his property. So what I was going to say was that if you had room on that meeting 2 weeks from now, you know, I can do that as one way, or I just withdraw and resubmit. I mean, we're going to come back. They do want to have the garage, and I do think that I can try to address his concerns by having some separation between the properties. That's what I actually had in my exhibits tonight, was to show where their home is and what the relationship is from this property to their property, as a way of trying to address that and mitigate that. And it's just in the interest of time. You've been going at this for a while, so
Yeah.
Those are my two options. If the board's not receptive to the fact that I'd be amending my application while I appear before you for the extra garage that I didn't realize that he had gone ahead and built, then that's an issue. I know in the past, we've been able to do that when we were doing another project where we had a garage that we didn't know about. Not to say I want to do that, but that was a mystery garage, yeah. So I really leave it to my butter. If he's not comfortable with me meeting with him informally and trying to resolve this between now and the next meeting, then I'm fine. I'll just resubmit and do everything the proper way. If he's comfortable with that, then I would ask that we have the opportunity to do it, because a lot of time has already been burned to get to this point, to have a meeting before you and to have him put his testimony in. And I'd like to try to address it.
I can respond on that if you'd like. I guess my preference would be to have the hearing set, September 19th? But I would also like to informally talk between now and then, and we can resolve it, and then we would inform you. That way we have a bracket on the one end.
Do we have time, though, because this needs to, if this is withdrawn, is there time for a new application?
Well, that's,
Wouldn't be.
That's the
No.
second question.
Right.
So that would have to go to October then.
I am not sure I'm entirely clear on the technical rules of being able to amend.
I don't believe you can give more than what an application is asking.
Okay, fine. Then I would use the opportunity. I know, I'm with you,
That's
Karen.
all I know, is he taking.
I know. And the
Can I-
other one was on like
I
a
say- I think
large
that-
lot, so.
This is just there have been times where, I think at least one occasion where this came up when I was the chairperson, and either we screwed up and sent something wrong, or it was technically incorrect, so then we just
But it wasn't-
reserve the notice to everyone on the abutters list. So what you would do
Well-
is you would just correct the notice and then resend it to all the abutters I think you could do that, but.
So, and also, I mean, I think technically, what was being asked for is an additional two-car garage. And that's still what's being asked for. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the existing plans had 3 cars instead of
Right,
2.
the
which was
envelope's
mistake.
no different, everything exactly, it's just this leader showed 2, because that's what we had understood from the architect. And
Right.
then we see the picture today, and
Not
we're
enough
like,
time
wait
to
a minute,
advertise.
that's 3.
So it's kind of, I do want to at least get this decided on as to how we're going to handle it for the next one. I do think having you folks talk individually in the meantime, like you suggested, would be a great idea.
I'll renotice as well, because I think
Um,
that would clarify the point, at least with what we've done. Wouldn't make a newspaper notice for 2 consecutive weeks, but I could definitely get my butter notification out with 2 weeks of notice.
I'm not
So I'd have to check on that,
guaranteeing
because I
that
don't
that's
know.
the legally proper.
I was about to
It's just
say,
an
I'll
idea I
defer
can
to,
remember.
Yeah, so,
Jim Hagley was here earlier.
he was, but he's not now. I'm gonna call on my alternate sitting over there, who I know is an attorney and is probably like chomping at the bit to chime in on this, to see if he actually knows something on this.
I don't know the specific answer. I can only speak to my experience, prior experience.
Sorry, we need a microphone and you need to introduce yourself. Sorry about that. I'm adding complexity to this that probably doesn't need to be there.
No, I think you're on the right point. Michael Robbins, alternate member. And historically, so there's a technical issue with respect to the petition. The hearing has been, we're here tonight, we're open, it's discussed. To me, it's making sure all the abutters are noticed, because this is an important change, but at the same time, it's a public hearing, and every part of the public, and it's on TV, that, you know, this is the issue here. The underlying issue with respect to the garage still needs to get addressed, but I mean, whether or not that requires for people to come back or not, that's a separate issue.
I mean, I guess, Craig, what, if we continue this, we can find out, you know, we can, I guess, speak with council between now and then to find out if this needs to be
Okay.
withdrawn, and then if it'd almost be irrelevant to the applicant, because they wouldn't have time for the next one to be on it anyways. So they have time to be on the October one then, if it gets determined, you know, that it needs
So
to
let's do this.
be. So I guess we could just continue it.
I'm gonna suggest that we continue it to September 19th, and I think we're up to what, 7:45 at this point?
Yeah.
Because we're
Yep.
clicking through these things. In the meantime, we will check to see if we actually do have to have you withdraw and renotice. In the meantime, I would expect you to at least renotice the abutters, but I will be in touch with you. I or Karen will be in, I will call Aldo.
But we can't make someone withdraw.
I will tell you that I would withdraw.
So if I say that, we can have the hearing on the 19th, but all we're going to do is say, we weren't continuing, it wasn't an option, you have to withdraw and renotice. My guess is he's going to want to withdraw and renotice quicker than the 19th.
That's right.
So I think this gives him some flexibility, allows us to find the right answer, and doesn't hold you up for an entire another month within the process if you do actually have to withdraw and reapply.
Right, because I also wanted to assure the abutter, as part of this, we needed to come to you first to get the garage. If you approve the garage, I'm going to go to conservation, because now I am altering more of the lot.
Yeah.
And that was the next part of this. So stormwater is going to be addressed. It's just, we have to do things in sequence. So coming here was required first, then we would go to conservation.
Okay.
So, thank you.
All right, so I'll make a motion to continue this to the September 19th meeting at 7:45.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Suggest
I
5 minutes?
would entertain a 5-minute break if anybody would like to make such a motion.
I'll move that we recess for 5 minutes.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are in recess for 5 minutes. Okay, we are bringing the meeting back into session. We are going to move on to the item for 2 East Main Street. Karen, if you could read the notice.
Watershed Investment Corporation, 2 East Main Street. The Board of Appeals of the Town of Southborough will hold a public hearing in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room of the Southborough Townhouse, 17 Common Street, on Wednesday, August 29th, 2018, at 7:45 p.m. with regard to the petition of Watershed Investment Corp., 2 East Main Street, P.O. Box 290, Southborough, Mass. The petitioner is seeking a special permit to construct a mixed-use building, will consist of 2 B-use businesses on the first floor and 4 one-bedroom R-use apartments on the second floor. Relief requested is pursuant to Section 174-8C2. The Board of Appeals may, by special permit, allow several different uses if otherwise permitted in district. A copy of the application may be reviewed at the office of the Building Department located at 9 Corderville Road, Southborough, Mass. during normal business hours. Craig Nicholson, Chairman.
Okay, we will open this up to a presentation.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay with that? I'm just going to try to use this mic. Is that working?
I don't know.
Not sure.
All right.
Well, she says it's working.
Thumbs up? Thank you. Great, appreciate it. Peter Bemis, Engineering and Design Consultants, here on behalf of Watershed Investment Corporation. So as provided in 174-8C2, the Schedule of Use Regulations, the zoning board may grant a special permit. And I want to note that, a special permit, not a variance. We're not trying to deal with the uses here, other than through a special permit for uses, allowing more than one principal permitted use at the facility planned for 2 East Main Street property. The regulation allows the zoning board by special permit to allow several different uses at the site if the board deems that such are compatible and meet the requirements of 174-9 and result in improved circulation and land use patterns. We're hopeful that the board, once it better understands the history of 2 East Main Street and the multiple uses that we envision at the property, that they can coexist and that the board would support the special permit. We need to start with the history, and what I have here before you is the historical commission drawing that they provided me with. This is turn of the century, called the Sealy Block. Sealy Block is the corner of East Main Street, the subject property. So what you're looking at here is Newton Street, heading to the north, and then you've got East Main running across the front to Main. The railroad tracks are going to be here behind this tree. This building and this building, this was called a laundry. All right, it has a second floor. We suspect it was probably a rooming house on the second floor, but on the first floor it was a laundry of some sort. No details are available through the Historical Commission, but that's how they refer to the building. This is the blacksmith shop, and it went all the way down along Newton Street, pretty much the length of the property. And that's what this looked like up until some point in the 20s, when it converts to a gas station. Again, this is that laundry building. Now it's a bit of a convenience store, and you can see the gas pumps located in front of the property. At some point in 1950s, I believe, so here are the gas pumps in front of the building here. This was called Lyons Press. Lyons Press was a printing company. I learned about this through one of the town fathers here, who happened to be a boy driving by on his bike while the fire chief was out here directing traffic because of the fire. His Lyons Press burned down, and he ran right into him. That's what started me down the road of, wait a minute, there was some history here, instead of where I had started with the project, which was, there was a gas station here. So my involvement was this history. This is the only thing that I really knew about. Excuse me. The Gulf Station. And for those of you that weren't here back then you don't even know about it, but there was a gas station here at the corner of East Main and Newton Street. And it was a Gulf Station. That was the logo that was there. And this is all new structures, basically. Lyons Press was located over here. It burned down. They ended up putting another bay onto the gas station. And they also sold automobiles here. There was actually about, I think, 5 different dealerships where you could buy different brands of cars, and you would buy that one car and they would bring it in for you, not like the dealerships we have today. There was also some history here of them pumping propane in the back. There was a slab where they put propane into people's tanks. So that's the history up until the 90s. The gas station was raised in the late 90s. The site was cleaned up, and at close of the century, basically there was a vacant lot here. I purchased it in 2000. Southborough Crossing purchased it in 2005, and we sought permits from the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission. As part of those approvals, we had a 22-space parking lot as part of our site plan. And we got permission to do work in the buffer zone of wetlands that are on the site, and we got permission to put in a soil absorption system. The unfortunate side of that was that soil absorption system was based on a much lower flow because we didn't have all the history on the site. So it was very hard to do a project that was financially viable, and that's why it's pretty much sat undeveloped up to this point. Plus, we had to go through this recession that we all had to experience. So our proposal today is to construct a 2.5-story, 6,600 square foot building. It's a 3,300 square foot footprint. It's in a traditional colonial style. The third floor, this is going to be trusses, so this would be basically just a storage area up on the third floor, but we wanted it to have the appearance of being a multi-story building. It's prepared by Ron Searles Associates, and in it, we're proposing potentially four business units, B use, on the first floor, and then 4 R2 uses on the second floor. And I'm going to be specific about those uses because in my application, I talk about residential, the one-bedroom residential. One-bedroom residential gets defined through the building code. So the 2015 International Building Code is what we and are using in Southborough, and that's what's being observed by the building department. And residential in this category that we're in is referred to as Group R2. So anytime I'm talking about residential, I'm talking about a non-transient residence. And I'm going to just give you folks a copy. This is right out of the book. It's page 50. You can just pass this down. So on page 50, again, this is the residential. It's 10.4 residential group R2. Residential group R2 occupancies containing sleeping units or more than 2 dwelling units where the occupants are primarily permanent in nature, including apartment houses, and then it goes through other uses that aren't pertinent, or hotels and motels, non-transient. So the goal of the project is not just to bring commercial office space into downtown Southborough, but also to bring a residential housing unit, again, by my definition that I've just given you, to this area. So it would be a financially viable project now, because we've got the basis of having residential with the commercial, and we'd also have the ability to have more people being in downtown Southborough on a full-time basis. As provided in 174-8C2, we offered the following in support of the petition. The special permit can be granted since the commercial, office, and residential uses are in harmony with the surrounding downtown businesses and residential properties, many of which have multiple businesses and/or families in residence within the same building envelope. There is no conflict with public health, safety, convenience, and welfare, as evidenced with the findings of the Southborough Board of Health to permit the siting of a soil absorption system and the findings of the Conservation Commission to conduct work in the buffer zone of wetlands on the property. The project will meet all zoning setbacks, and the building maintains scale and scope that will not be detrimental or cause an offensive effect to the neighborhood, and will result in a positive impact upon abutting property values as well as future municipal tax revenues. In addition, the following items need to be met. Location. This development proposal is located in downtown Southborough, and the facility that is being proposed is similar to the multi-business and multi-residential buildings in and within downtown area. Nearby uses would benefit by having additional patrons from the residential use component, and the the commercial office would also help make downtown a more convenient destination, affording opportunities to remain in town to shop or conduct business. The site, again, has already secured its conservation permit to review drainage matters, and the municipal water consumption for this project is not significant. It would not impact available supply or service along Main Street. The site does not result in any wetland loss, habitat disturbance is negligible, and the site abuts the railroad tracks. There are no trees of significance or other natural assets on the subject property. For reference, when it comes to abutting uses, I've identified where our locus is. So if we look at uses going up Newton Street, we have 6 Newton with 2 apartments, we have 7 Newton with 2 apartments, we have 8 with 3 apartments, and we have 10 with an apartment and a multi-use facility. If we look at East Main Street, Main Street, we have 2 Main, an existing eating establishment. At 3 Main, we have a cleaners and a barber, multi-use. At 4 Main, we have a store. At 5 Main, we have a retail restaurant, multi-use. At 6, we have 2 apartments. At 9, we have a general office building. At 11, we have a multi-office. At 14, a general office. At 15, 3-unit apartment. At 16, a 3-unit apartment. At 18, a 2-unit apartment. Going up East Main Street, we have 1 East Main multi-use. That's the insurance, the florist, and I know there was a food van working out of here at some point. At 11 East Main, we have a 2-bedroom apartment, 2-unit apartment. At 26, we have a 3-unit, and at 12, we have a 9-unit. We've got a 9-unit residence there. So those are the similar uses that are near where our locus our proposal is being made. The activity type and mix. This development proposal includes both residential and non-residential uses in a neighborhood that currently has both uses. The commercial office space will afford greater opportunities for business to locate in downtown, which has limited availability of space available, and the space also is limiting it to only 1-bedroom units, there is a need for that. I've had a number of people express the point of view that they had to leave town and then come back because there was no opportunities for them to find a place to live. Visual consequences. The development proposal cites an architecturally significant building that's going to anchor the corner of East Main Street at the crossroads of downtown. It has the right scale and scope. The parking is located at the rear of the building. This is the site plan that was part of your packet. So again, we're looking at bringing the building, soldiering along East Main Street, and then the parking would be to the rear. Again, a desirable planning technique when you can achieve it versus putting the parking in front of the building. Access. Traffic from this development proposal will be well below the 10% threshold that you folks have as part of your performance standard. The location affords excellent pedestrian and vehicular movements to, from, and within. Having sidewalks and crosswalks along East Main Street, there's no need to enter onto or disturb abutting properties to do this proposal. The last point is development rate. This is a modest development proposal for downtown and will not tax any municipal services, including schools, water, local road capacity, and in no way preempt smaller developments going forward. We're not displacing something else that's in the works. Overall, we believe that this mixed-use development project is just what's needed to bring a new investment and a vitality to downtown Southborough. A century has passed since there was a blacksmith and a laundry at 2 East Main, which I'm sure was quite a vibrant area as part of town, having the blacksmith shop there, because your mode of transportation then would have been your horse. The gas station, was there for a number of years. That served people's needs. At this point, Falcone's is there. That serves all of our needs. There's no need to have another gas station at this location. The idea is to add vibrancy and enhance the downtown location. We're hopeful that we can get your support. I wanted to also say that I did have some aerials, if we needed to kind of go up through the perspectives. That was also part of your packet. I did provide the soil absorption plan. I have it with me that's stamped and approved by the Board of Health for the current proposal. And then this is the site plans that the Conservation Commission issued the order of conditions based on. So I'm prepared to address any of those points, any of those matters. I'd just like to close by again reiterating the fact that we are looking for a special permit. I believe you are the first step, that in order for me to advance this project further, it is this board that controls multiple uses on the property. The section of zoning that we're stating is verbatim, right in my application. It is the Zoning Board of Appeals that has to make this decision. And in order for us to go any further, we have to get an approval from you, or there's no project that has multiple uses in it. I thank you for the opportunity to present this.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I will open it up to people in the audience who have an interest in talking about this. As you get up to the microphone, please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Freddie Gillespie, and 78 Southville Road, Southborough. I am speaking only as a citizen who was one of the proponents of a citizen's petition for removing the use variance from our zoning code as a tool for relief from the zoning code that was overwhelmingly supported at town meeting. And I feel this has a direct relevance to that, because as much as many people may like this project, some that don't, I'm sure, but even if you think it's the best thing that could happen in the town of Southborough, it doesn't mean you can ignore our zoning code. And I sent a letter, I know it was late in the day, but I just found out about it, and I spent a lot of time working on this to be sure I had the zoning facts correct. But the point that was not mentioned in Mr. Bemis's presentation is that the qualifier that you can't ignore is that you may issue a special permit to allow several different uses if those uses are otherwise permitted in the district. Apartments are not permitted in the district in the way they're being presented here. Historical adaptive reuse and accessory apartments, neither of which applies to a new development. So this use is not allowed, therefore this special permit can't be granted. It's very easy to just read that and say, no, we can't do this. What needs to be done to allow this building to move forward is to go and change the zoning code. You run into other problems. Yes, it's the first step to get multiple uses within a district to come before you for a special permit, if those uses are listed. If you approve this, you are in effect saying, yes, you're approved, because the apartments are part of the project you're looking at, you're approving the apartments. The next step is that the planning board has to approve the uses in any building over 2,000 square feet. Do you think the planning board really is going to approve uses that are not allowed in the zoning code? I mean, I don't know why you would, but I can't see that they would either. And if if they didn't, now you're putting two boards against each other. I don't know how you can overlook the fact, show me where it says apartments are an allowed use. Mr. Bemis did a nice job describing building code. Well, first of all, building code and zoning code, that's apples and oranges. Building code is irrelevant and does not define zoning use. Building code is a state code, zoning is local. I guarantee when you go and look at zoning, no one pulls out the building code. I mean, except for maybe just now. It's just not the same thing. Building code, totally different than our zoning code. Zoning code is voted by the citizens of the town of Southborough. We did not vote on the building code. We did not say, oh, an apartment is the same thing as something else because the building code says that that's how you build them the same. So that information is totally irrelevant to what you're being asked to consider. And I know that there are many people who like this project, but you can't ignore the zoning code and make up new uses. And the fact that there are other uses like this in a zoning code from pre-existing before this code was in place doesn't count. If there's other multifamily units. You know, we have in some districts the old Class C zoning lot size. Doesn't mean you can approve one today just because there used to be one. Prior use does not determine current use. The zoning code voted on by the town's people at town meeting, that's what determines it. And I say, therefore, this permit, unfortunately, for the project proponent, who I think has, been led down the wrong path, it's improperly before you. It's not an allowable way of issuing a permit for this project. So, thank you.
Thank you. Would you care to respond to that? It looks like you have something to say.
Yeah, I do. So I think,
Name?
my name is Mark Robert. I'm the building commissioner for the town. What's before you tonight is properly before you. He has a right to do, per special permit, a mixed-use building. What he's asking for, and I think what we're getting caught up with is the verbiage. What he's asking for is simply 174-8.4B, number 3, and 174-8.4B, number 4. And if you look at those two things, one of them calls for an office building, and the other one calls for a hotel or motel. Now, Mr. Bemis is calling it an apartment building, but what he's really going for is a hotel or a motel. Now, if you look at hotel and motel in our definitions of zoning, it's the zoning bylaw is silent on a definition. So when the zoning bylaw is silent, you would then go to the building code. The building code also doesn't have a definition for hotel or motel, but what it does under Chapter 3 is it puts a hotel or motel into either a transient or a non-transient use. Make no mistake, this is not an accessory apartment. I've heard a lot of different things. This is an R2 non-transient motel, which is also the exact same definition as an apartment building, and that's, I think, why Mr. Bemis is calling it an apartment building. I don't know how he plans to rent it out. I think he's planning on renting it out long-term, but if you look at the definition of transient, and I think this is where it's important, a transient is an occupancy of a dwelling unit or sleeping unit for not more than 30 days. That's transient. Those are the nice motels, the, Omni Biltmores or whatever. The other motels, the non-transients, is an occupancy of greater than 30 days. Exactly like an apartment. So I believe, and I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I believe that's why Mr. Bemis is calling it an apartment. But what he's going for is properly before you. It's a mixed-use building, which is allowed. And he's looking to do, and if you decide it's a good project, it couldn't be approved as an apartment building because Ms. Gillespie is right, apartment buildings aren't allowed. But it would have to be approved to include the following uses: 174-8.4B, number 3, and 174-8.4B, number 4. And those two uses are allowed as of right by special permit.
Can you repeat those two sections
It's
again?
174-8.4B, number 3, and also number 4, 174-8.4B, number 4. And if you look at those two, it includes hotel and motel, And it doesn't specify transient or non-transient, because that would switch the use from either an R1 or an R2. And it doesn't. So it's basically could be a transient or a non-transient. So a non-transient is an apartment building. That's what it is. If you go on Route 9, next to Owen O'Leary's, you're not going there on vacation. It's a non-transient motel, and you're not gonna, you're living there permanently or long-term, more than 30
Greater than
days.
30 days.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Just make your way to the microphone.
Yeah, Steve Morrow, owner of Morrow's Village Cafe, 2 Main Street in Southborough. My concern is that you're asking to put a 2 1/4 story building in the Village District. It's gonna change the whole demeanor of the whole area. And also the water flow that's existing now. Just 2 months ago, I watched the Highway Department drop a sub pump directly adjacent to this in the manhole cover and was pumping water down the street. There's wetlands that abut this property that during a thunderstorm, you can sit in my cafe, look out the window and watch a river of water go down the railroad tracks now. And I would hate to see this change the whole Village District. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Connolly, 26 Oak Hill Road. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Economic Development Committee. We anticipated submitting a letter of support for this project, and we very strongly support this project, and we do plan to submit a letter. This project we think is phenomenal. It lines up very well with the Economic Development Committee's stated mission, which is to stabilize the tax base while simultaneously making sure that we maintain Southborough's character and charm. Since 2017, we've been focusing our efforts on revitalizing the downtown area, and our primary goals in that respect were to maintain complete transparency and community involvement. And in that light, we put out a survey we got 427 responses. We put that out about a year ago, end of last summer. And there was overwhelming support for revitalization downtown. We made sure that we reached out to business owners downtown, abutters. We held 4 separate public forums on this issue since last fall. But one very interesting piece of feedback that we received from the survey was actually specifically in regard to mixed-use development. And of the 427 respondents, 52% said that they were in favor of mixed-use development. Only 15% said that they were opposed to mixed-use development, being exactly what Mr. Bemis is proposing with retail on bottom and residential on top. The remaining 33% said that it would depend on the project, but they weren't strongly opposed to it. This is also in line with the 2008 master plan, which recommended mixed-use development specifically in the downtown business village district. Also in line with SHOP-C and their recommendations to diversify the housing stock at that time. That was also part of the 2008 master plan report. After the survey came out, we held multiple public forums. We specifically reached out to abutters, to business owners. We had a specific meeting with the local business owners. We've made multiple attempts to get as much feedback as we can, and the feedback has been very strongly in favor, specifically of restaurants, bakeries, pubs, small-scale retail, all in line with, nobody's looking for a chain or anything. Everybody's looking for small, local, community gathering places. And that is absolutely our goal. And it's something that we've been very focused on. And this seems to be, from our perspective, the right project at the right time. The fact that on this lot that has been vacant now for 15 or 20 years that we've received complaints consistently of what an eyesore it is, what can be done there. The fact that we have somebody who is tested and tried and has a viable plan that, has taken into consideration that who's somebody who's involved with our community, who's taken into consideration all of the factors that we know are important to residents, as far as making sure that aesthetically it fits in, the character fits with our town. I think that, this is very much in line with what we're looking for. So it has come to our attention today. We received, Freddie was kind enough to send over a copy of the letter that I know she submitted to you as well. Freddie has been involved with our efforts in the downtown revitalization project, and at this point, we have not had a chance to digest them. We don't feel that that's necessarily our role to make a recommendation on the zoning application piece of it, whether that's the proper channel. But I have to say that, I think it's horribly unfair to be pitting Mr. Bemis, who's put a lot of effort into this project, in the middle of the town's, of a dispute of which direction he needs to steer his permitting applications for to get this going. And certainly the EDC wants to work to support him in any way that we can to make this happen. But it shouldn't be that he's bounced around and told different things from different boards and committees, and that's certainly something that we're interested in helping to facilitate to fix going forward, because that's not how business should be run in this town. But we will be submitting a letter in support of Mr. Bemis's project. We hope to partner with him to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to speak, you can go to the podium and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Mary Quirk, and I live at 11 East Main Street, and I have never received anything of what you were talking about, nor have any of the other abutters to this property. We have gone to meetings. I'm sorry, I'm really upset by this. We have gone to meetings that talked about the grand plan that basically ended before the railroad tracks. But nothing was ever discussed with any of us about anything happening to this piece of property. And I'd really like to see all this information. And I'd like to see how that information should be presented tonight when it's impacting an entire neighborhood that lives around here and has lived here for a long time.
Okay, thank you. I am aware of the survey and the forums. I've responded to the survey that came out. I've attended forums held by the Economic Development Committee, so I do know they've been out there. I can't comment as to how you didn't get noticed or weren't.
None of us have ever been notified.
So I'm just. So no. Of the economic development survey, I'm just letting you know that it has been out there. I want to clear up the misconception that it was somehow not publicized, because it definitely has been. In terms of this property, this is the hearing for this property, and you were notified of that, and this is the case, right? And so you have been notified of the hearing on this specific property. What she was talking about was a general sense for the entire town survey, not a survey for this particular property. So I wanted to clear that up too. Freddie,
So I just would like to respond to the comments by the EDC. So we have a master plan. It has a lot of things in it, and there's a lot of goals, and there's a lot of different ways to achieve that goal. One of the ways to achieve the goal, if you want mixed use every single time, and I didn't have the chance to go through back in the days of the Zoning Advisory Committee, the ZAC, we had a diagnostic done of the zoning code. I know that at many of the EDC meetings, we're talking about changing the zoning code to allow mixed use. So like if you can do it by special permit, why would you ever have to go down that road? We have a plan from the ULI that's been hired to do this review. They specifically, at a meeting I was at, talked about changing the zoning code. If you can do it by a special permit, no need to change the zoning code. So that's why I'm surprised that this came up. Apartments, I'm sorry, You know, I'm not as expert when there's not a, I never heard that when there's not a definition. I don't think there's anyone in this room would think a motel, hotel is an apartment. Now, if that's a definition that you go down that road because it's not defined, okay. He should have listed on his application that it was a hotel. He said apartment. I'm befuddled. Why isn't there more apartments in town if this is actually an allowable use, an allowable way to reach it? There aren't. Nobody has tried it before because common sense says a hotel motel is not an apartment. You know, maybe building code says it can be. Is he going to charge occupancy taxes? Are we going to have a hotel motel tax on these transient, non-transient residents? Is a hotel motel appropriate in use with that neighborhood? He talked about apartments, not about a hotel motel as being in line with what's in the downtown area. Are these abutters going to want a transient, non-transient hotel motel above offices in the downtown area? I mean, you can spin it however you want, but always the clear path to take that has been talked about at all the meetings I've attended, and you know I've been to most of them, is changing the zoning code. So why are we here now? And feeling bad for Mr. Bemis, it's not the town's zoning code's fault that he was steered in the wrong direction. You don't give somebody zoning relief that's not allowed in the zoning code because he went to all this effort. You know, it's too bad. We like the project. Many people like the project. Doesn't mean you can just say, okay, we're going to do it by this method, and undermine the zoning code that takes 2/3 of the townspeople to vote at town meeting, and you know that's not an easy task. And to just say you're going to give a special permit and ignore that, I think that's very dangerous water to be treading on right now.
Ms. Gillespie, I appreciate that, but I would ask you to refrain from potentially threatening us with dangerous water as you talk about a decision in front of us.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to threaten you. I'm talking about the consequences, not from you, but down the road.
Either way, I'd just like you to be careful with what you say in a public hearing where it could be intoned that way.
Okay, I was not intending to threaten the ZBA in any way.
Okay, if I get a chance to speak? Okay, I don't have the benefit of Ms. Gillespie's letter. I guess you folks received it.
I emailed it, but it was late. It was
Oh.
4:30, 4:24.
I can't say it. I was still at the office and I didn't get it, but that's okay. It's all right, Karen. But my point would be, is that I did explain about the residential unit component. My letter does talk about residential units, and I defined that term for you before I started. I might have been talking too fast, because I have a history of talking too fast, trying to get my information out. I provided you with page 50 from that IBC. And in it was that component of those definitions. And I'm using that term interchangeably. I'm not standing before you tonight and talking apartments. I understand that. There's no, that's, in our zoning bylaw, that's actually not an excluded use in this zoning district either. It just talks about accessory apartments as being a use. It doesn't define that as being a use either. But what is defined, and what I'm specifically asking you for, is under 174(8), the Zoning Board of Appeals is the authority that has to grant multiple uses on a property, okay? You are the only one, not planning board, not town meeting, not some other group. It is the zoning board. So I need your action, and it is pertaining to the zoning section. And Mr. Robidoux was so kind to point out, but I'll be specific about it one more time, is that it's my non-transient Group 2 residential use, which is what I have applied for and I've described on my plans, and that is 174(8)(4) Village Business, Business Village District, Item 4, Hotel, Motel, Restaurant, excluding drive-through food service establishment. That is the line that I am on for my residential component. And then the other two uses that are available to me is retail sales and services, which do not involve manufacturing on the premises, and office banking and office building. That's basically what we're trying to do here on the first floor, is to have a retail Preferably retail, but if we have to, we'll do office. And that's my proposal before you, and you folks are the only authority that does that, and it is clearly stated in the words, and I'm not adding these words to the bylaw. It says the zoning board of appeals has the authority. I know that there was a group that went forward and tried this, and they did stop use variances. I'm not here before you for a use variance. I'm here before you for legitimate, allowable uses in this zoning district. And those are the ones that are defined, and that's what I'm seeking a permit from you for. And that's my filing, that was my application, and that's my proposal. I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I'm Joanne Anderson, and I live at 9 East Main Street. And some of our concerns, that is a really busy intersection now. To come across it right now, you have to stop, or you're going to get hit by a car that is failing to stop for a stop sign. We also have a concern that we do live above this place, and if you take away all the natural runoff for our houses, what happens if it's not done correctly and that water isn't directed someplace else? So it does become a problem for our houses.
Thank you.
Paul Nevin, 11 Newton Street. I would just like to speak to the safety of it all, because right now Newton Street is like a highway between the medical center and that intersection, which my neighbor just referenced. So the fact that you're now gonna have, I guess, a 22-car parking lot with potential for maybe 8 permanent residents or more than 30-day residents of this space there, plus the 22, and I don't know what type of businesses you're trying to put in there, whether there's a lot of coming and going. As it is, I have a young son, and people just fly down the street 65 miles an hour plus. And we have actually done speed gun, believe it or not. My neighbor, Jamie Falcone, across the street, went to Chief Powellhouse, and he said he can't really do anything because there's only 2 officers from 3 to 11. They won't do speed traps, but he said you can take it upon yourself, write license plates down, which we did. Believe it or not, and my 4-year-old son, myself, and Jamie did this, wrote it all down, and we were tracking people over 60 miles an hour frequently. So to have this many more cars flying down the street is not going to be really acceptable. There are no sidewalks. Nurses walk down from the medical center trying to get down there. And this isn't to say that I don't want something on the, ugly vacant lot. And that's what I'm kind of afraid of, that everyone's just going to kind of push something through just because they're tired of looking at this overgrown lot. I'm all for something that's appropriate, but I don't think the apartments would be appropriate, or motel, or whatever this is supposedly going to be. So I just want to put that forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm David Parry. I live at 22 Main Street. It's taken over 20 years with this vacant lot, with just untold number of complaints about the vacancy and the long grass and the lack of activity, and how our little village downtown is dying. And, we need mixed use, we need people living there, we need activity. And I say to you, competition is good. Competition is good. We need activity. This is the very thing. I'm an architect and a planner. It's the very thing the Urban Land Institute people were saying we need. Here it is. It's kind of a miracle. I know Peter very well, and he struggled with this forever to try and come up with something which is viable. And luckily, he has engineering skills, so he's dealing with this, water issues and the septic issues, technically and professionally and well, and he's getting the proper permits. Now let's talk relatively, his parking issue and travel. He's not going to cause 65 miles an hour travel down Newton Street. It's other people, isn't it? Coming, where are they, Marlborough, just in a hurry to get somewhere. It's nothing to do with this corner lot. There's a parking lot up there by Southborough, which has hundreds of cars in it. This is a tiny little project compared to and it's the very thing we need. A traditional building right on the corner, very visible, and he's offering it to us, and he's bent over backwards to come up with it. I think this is a policy issue. It's right what we need. It's what we need, and it's going to, we need to help our little downtown with the businessmen there. It's a pity the Baltus is on here, because I'm sure they'd support this. They would say competition is good, come on in. We need more people living down here to support these businesses. We need the character, we need activity. I say to you, this is exactly what we need. We should try and find a way to approve this and not to disapprove it. Otherwise, we're going to have another 20 years of nothingness. And it's an embarrassment. It's a negative. It's stopping people coming in and investing downtown. And he's trying to do the right thing. I think he's got the answer here. I just urge you to look at this thing very carefully. These technical issues, we got the professional building staff here saying it's okay. Well, he is the professional. He is our building inspector. He is an interpreter of zoning, and he says it's okay. Now, I say to you, find a way to approve this, because this, we need it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak?
By all means.
Sam Stiver, 7 Presidential Drive, formerly a member of the zoning board. I actually think this is an interesting project in terms of the kinds of things that David talks about, the EDC talks about, and so forth. I think there's one thing that you might actually consider before moving forward with this. It sounds like there's disagreement about whether the right permit is being applied for or not. And also appears that there are folks who are not in favor of the development. I'm not a lawyer, but I spend a lot of time with lawyers. And one of the concepts that I'm sure the lawyers are familiar with is called repose, which in Chapter 48, Section 7, basically says that if something is built without the proper permitting, that there's a period of 6 years during which an appeal can be filed. And I think it would be unfortunate to create a situation where, in fact, there was uncertainty about the underlying permit that would put potentially Mr. Bemis and others in a position of building something that maybe could be rolled back at some point in the future. So I would urge you to maybe seek some additional confirmation of that, maybe town council's opinion, to make sure that you're working off the right base to issue this permit or to consider this permit before you move forward and grant a permit that, again, carries with it potentially some uncertainty and people who may decide that they want to appeal this and create an even bigger problem. So thank you.
Hi, Julie Connolly with the EDC. I just wanted to clarify because I was told that maybe it wasn't clear. We strongly support this project. We are not taking a position on this time of whether this is the correct avenue. As Sam just stated, it seems like there's potentially a question as to which the correct route is, whether we need to go through planning first or through zoning first. We are absolutely committed to making sure it is done properly so that and as efficiently as possible. And we will continue as the EDC to continue to reach out to abutters and to stakeholders and to make this as communal as a process. I do apologize if you weren't reached. I'm happy to talk to you offline about the efforts that were made to reach as many people as possible. So we will continue in that vein to do that. Thank you. Anything?
John Wood, 10 Gilmore Road, EDC Chair. I just wanted to make sure we support this project wholeheartedly, but I want to make sure that we want to make sure that we get all the information we need. We don't take any position on whether this permit, the special permit, is what it takes to do it, whether it's through a zoning change. But it's a great project. The lot needs something down there, and hopefully we can figure out the right way to do it and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sean Morrow, 2 Main Street, Morrow's Village Cafe. I think I'd first like to say that I do support the property being developed. I think it's sat vacant for too long. We need to see something there. Whether this is the right property, I think there's a lot of issues and concerns that still need to be addressed with the residents. But I think the real meaning of this meeting is really to address this special permitting, which, I apologize if I don't have all the correct verbiage, but this special permitting, basically getting the 4 motel units above the commercial space You know, whether that is something that, you know, we think we should allow. 2 Main Street, you know, can we put motel space above a restaurant and rent that out? Are we now opening up the downtown to going up stories? I mean, I just think there's a lot of, I just think the approval of, you know, the units needs to be thought about and considered, just given the fact that if it is approved based on the fact that these are motel units going up onto the 2nd story, you know, what else might that, you know, other special permitting that other businesses and property owners could use.
Okay, thank you. There were also a couple of other letters that came in. One from Mimi Luttrell, and one from Main Street Bank, who is in a butter. They will be part of the record. I don't know if we need to necessarily read them in. Ms. Luttrell's letter closely followed what Ms. Gillespie said, so I think the points have been already made. Main Street Bank's main thing is they were in favor of it and they urged us to grant the special permit. They are interested in having more business and development downtown. Obviously, they're a bank, they are looking for customers. Not surprising. So I think, so it's 9:40. I'm willing to keep going as long as we need to on this. We should probably open it up for our initial questions here. Maybe kind of assess where we're at in our conversation on this in about another 10 minutes or so and see what we think about either plowing through or.
Do you mind if I kind of take a stab at it? So I like this project a lot. I feel very similarly to Mr. Perry that I would very much like to, this is a great proposal. And I think, you know, I've lived in town for 5 years and I've been looking forward to something like this, and something like this has arrived. The issue to me is just the one that Mrs. Gillespie identified. I agree. In order to grant the permit that you're seeking, we need to satisfy ourselves that both of the uses that you're seeking permission to do are permitted in the zoning district, and it really comes down to this issue of whether 174 8.44 hotel or motel categorizes what you're seeking to do on the top floor. So I would like some additional time to think about that. And you were talking earlier about other buildings in the area that have a lot more than 2 or 3 apartments. And do you know whether those are in the business village district? And what are the addresses again?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't write them down the first time.
It's on the left-hand side.
I mean, as you go up Main, I'm not sure where the zone line actually runs, but there are, I know.
If we're gonna, if you talk, you need to go to a microphone, just because it's taped and people are gonna be like, what's that, like, mumbling noise in the back?
Go back to the video and write these down.
Right. So basically what I'm saying is that there's a number of dwelling units and uses, because some of them are commercial, that have multiple components.
Which supports what you're
Which
saying.
supports what I'm saying, correct.
So what are the
correct.
addresses of?
So I can go back through them again.
Yes, please.
Sure, okay, so I had 6 Newton, 7 Newton. 6 Newton's a 2, 7 Newton's a
apartments.
2. Right. 8 Newton is a 3.
So, excuse me, these are apartments with commercial or retail?
They're just apartments, that's how I was given the data.
Okay, I think we want to see mixed use.
No,
Well, I think
can I
we're-
just,
Yeah.
to clarify,
Yeah.
You know, if they're in the business village district, or even if they're in the residential A or residential B, it'd be interesting to look at these buildings and then think, okay, if there are 3 apartments in that building, why is that okay? What in the zoning bylaw authorizes that? You know? That's
Well, in
that's
some
where I'm
instances, they
thinking.
may have pre-existing
Okay.
zoning, or they got converted and no one's taken issue with it. I mean, I don't know, I didn't go and do
So
any research on
6,
each
7,
one.
8 Newton,
I just looked at the assessment component.
the assessors,
Correct. I used that database to determine how many units is that dwelling supporting, either residentially or commercially, so I would understand what was happening
Right.
in my sphere.
okay.
Because I wasn't trying to go far afield, I just took what was right around me here.
Yeah.
And the one that just struck me was the 9-unit one, because it's right next to the daycare. And I
Yeah.
was thinking to myself, wait a minute.
But Debbie, I think to your point,
Yeah.
it's, the mixed use is allowed by special permit. We just have to confirm that both uses are allowable within the district. So whether, you know, he was looking at multifamily as a use within the district that exists,
Yeah.
either, you know, by historic nature or by its own special permit of some sort, versus just mixed use, because we can, as long as we just know that they're both applicable.
Right, yeah, I was confused by this as well. I actually think that the application is incorrect because it says apartment when we're really talking about hotels and motels because it isn't allowed use. So I'd like to see that application corrected, honestly, but there's also a section of the code that talks about prohibited use, and anything that's not already listed in the village, in the district, is
Mhm.
prohibited. So I don't think we then go to the building code, I think, which was the point that Ms. Gillespie made. I think that we're looking only within the zoning code and saying, is this a use or is it not a use? And hotel motel is a use, but I still don't really understand the nature of what those units are up there. Are they
Okay.
hotel spots?
Yeah, so I'll go through that, because I did put an asterisk next to that, and it's my complete application and my legal notice, which does cover all of those bases regarding the uses and the R2 use. So as you take it collectively, we have covered that base. What I'm trying to, I guess where I'm coming from with this is that in order for this project to be viable financially, because we're talking about $1 million investment here, is that second-story office is not going to work in downtown Southborough. I can stand here and say that it's going to, but it's not. And therefore, my $1 million investment's gonna go down in flames, and someone else is gonna own it for pennies on the dollar. So we have to find a way to get a component that will make this work financially. So what are the other alternatives? Well, you could certainly put some sort of franchise here. I don't want to see that happen. That's why I've struggled with this all this time. We had enough septic flow to answer that kind of issue a long time ago, but that's not what we wanted to do. So now we're trying to do something which we can control our own destiny on by having the residential piece. That is critical. And again, the use structure of the zoning bylaw, and I've participated in ZAC meetings. I went to all of those conferences, and I tried to see that they would change that definition, and they didn't. And then when they got rid of use variance, well, that would have made it a lot easier too. But that's gone as well. So now the tool that it does exist is what are those uses in the zoning bylaw? And they are right here, and that's what I'm asking you for this evening, is that I'm asking for my first floor to be retail sales that doesn't involve manufacturing, office, banking, and the second story is a motel. And that's what those units are gonna be. And in the definition, they are gonna be non-transient. I'm not interested in having a sign out there and running a motel in that regard. But no different than the business that's operating right now on Route 9. That is essentially a motel, and they're operating with long-term rentals in there. That's what I would anticipate doing here. And then I can financially afford to put the project forward and conduct the project. I know Ms. Gillespie brought up something about excise taxes and whatnot. There are room taxes that are applicable, but they're on a certain length of time of duration when someone is renting the unit. And I believe in the case that they're not applicable when they're over a certain period of time. So, again, I'm trying my best to put forward a project that I can control and be able to afford. And it gets to a point where I can't do that, or I can't put forward the project, well then, someone else will come forward and do something that they could do. And like the franchise people, they'd love that, but I don't want that to happen here. That's why I got involved in the beginning.
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned second-story retail, so this isn't my area of expertise, but.
Second story,
Office
well, it's retail would definitely not work, I can
So
assure you of that.
second-story office.
Faneuil Hall, it works,
Yeah.
but not here.
It doesn't, we have, okay.
There's no second story, and the second story office, the case in point would be the professional building up
Right.
the street.
Yeah.
I think they struggle to put people up there.
Yeah.
I just don't, it's not gonna happen here. I'm not gonna put a building up that I know I'm gonna not be able to rent. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So the residential piece, we know we can fit because there's demand for that people have expressed that. There's no opportunity for that. And that's and the most important part is, that's all around me. And it's not hurting anybody. No one comes down here and complains about the 9-unit building next to the daycare. If they did, we wouldn't want any more of it. I get that, but that's not what we do. People are saying we need it, we want it, and I just think it's a good use for that corner. And having the people there is important. It's a way for us to financially afford it, but it's also gonna put people downtown. So they can go to the spot, they can go to the store, they can go to the barber shop.
Yep. You mentioned, and I'll get you right after this, because I was waiting for this question. In terms of the traffic, not exceeding 10%, do you have a study that talks about the traffic impact?
If you asked for me to do one, I could do one. If you take a look at the units and the travel patterns here, there's so much background traffic, we're not gonna trip any of that. But I did not do one.
I understand. I think,
It has to exceed 10%, so I'm just saying to you that there's no way. If you took all of the traffic and all the businesses that are down there, I'm not gonna change it 10%. I can't.
right. No, I understand that. I'm just wondering what you had in regards to that. I think, obviously, some of the questions from the folks in the neighborhood, some of your neighbors, obviously, there's a concern about the flow of traffic going through there already in terms of speed, not necessarily volume.
Speed, I will say, I travel on Newton Street too, and I've seen people go down that street way too fast, no disagreement. What I can say, though, is that a building on this corner will have a calming effect on that intersection. It's gonna force you to slow down, it's gonna force you to stop and observe that sign that you're probably ignoring today. Because there's gonna be this mass there. And right now, it's wide open, so you can see and you can look all the way up there, and you can make your decision, oh, I'm not stopping, I'm going right on through. So that will change things. I think you will see that it's gonna have a calming effect on the intersections. The only thing that DPW could possibly do is just make it a four-way stop, which would really slow things down, but it would work. It's been effective in other intersections in town. I know I lived on Woodland Road and Upper Woodland Road, and that intersection, when they put the three-way stop in at all those intersections going under the Mass Pike, best thing that ever happened. Because before it was a free-for-all, who would go first? Now everybody's gotta stop.
Okay. Ma'am.
Betty Bedine, I live at East Main Street. One East Main Street, which is Lamey's Insurance, has 2 vacant retail, and it's been vacant for, I bet you, 2 years now. He cannot rent it. I'm not speaking, I've talked to Chris Lamey, and there's a florist there in his building, and his office. So, how are they gonna rent more retail if they can't rent what is there now?
Thank you.
Paul Nevin, 11 Newton. I was just going to clarify, the only mixed use, I think Debbie had asked, the only mixed use that I'm aware of in the area is the Ellis Garage, which has the 2-family house on the same property. All the others, Germain has a 2-family house, which is the next house down Newton Street, then the one after that is a 3-family unit. Like, it's a house. It's not like a motel type situation up above living, and there's no other mixed use that I'm aware of, so.
Okay, thank you.
Chris Robbins, 39 Parkerville Road. I'm a member of the Economic Development Committee. Personally, I support this kind of project. I think what's the old saying? Its time has come, and somebody has stepped up to the plate. And what's incredible about our little downtown is we have the Morrow family that has been here for 3 generations, that has invested thousands of dollars to keep that a viable downtown. And they hired the right chef, and if you haven't been there, get over there now, because we've got one of the best cooks going, and the whole team of people that serve this community. In addition, they sold the convenience store to the Patel family, and they fixed it up and refurbished it. Then we had a fire department falling down, and the Baltus family invested and refurbished it, and we have a beautiful, as a result, it brought vibrancy back to the downtown. Peter Aspesi, who owns the tow truck service and also leases space for mechanical repairs. If you haven't been there, take your car down for the oil change and your fix to get your car repaired. But Peter Aspesi, and as a result of the Economic Development Committee, we found him a space on Route 9, which enabled him to not only grow significantly, but move those big trucks out of the downtown area. Now we have, and these are all residents, I don't know about the Patel family, I don't think so. But now we have Peter, who has been to this board multiple times, is intimately aware of how to do things right, and he's a resident. So we have residents and business people who have enabled our town to grow and prosper despite our frustration with that spot. So I think it's important that all of us take time to recognize those who have invested deeply for years in ensuring and helping our town to prosper, and also to employ hundreds of kids and adults. So please, let's honor those people who have made this town grow and continue to do the best we can, as Peter is now trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've heard quite a bit, and I appreciate everybody coming out to talk about this. Obviously, this is a critical piece of property in our downtown. I have heard comments of my board and the folks out in the audience. I agree on the need to understand if non-transient hotel is what we are really talking about here, and if that is an approvable use and an existingly allowed use. Until we know that, I don't think we can take a vote on this. So I'm going to suggest that we postpone this.
Continue it.
Pardon?
Continue it.
Continue it, sorry, whatever. I think everybody got what I meant. I'm going to suggest that we continue this so that we can get guidance on that issue. Personally, I'll be upfront and say it, I like the idea of this. I like the idea of mixed use in the downtown area. I think that lot needs to be developed. I do believe this is the right time for this type of development there. I'm not minimizing the questions about traffic and safety and whether or not non-transient hotel is an allowable use. I want to get that settled. But I do like the concept of the project. And if we can answer those questions, then I think we can continue the discussion and have an informed decision to make. Anybody else have kind of a question on that, or do we want to move to continue this?
I would say you pretty much captured exactly what I feel. That I think this is a project we have to. I'm in favor of, but I do have concerns about the technicality of it. I mean, I think, I find it hard to believe people be opposed to, we have 4 apartments downtown. But I understand that that's not what the zoning says.
And, well,
so let's,
it's
may, probably the right thing to do.
It may very well be what the zoning says. That's the trick, in terms of the technical aspect of what a non-transient hotel is.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we're clear on the fact that it could very well be absolutely legitimate as an allowed use once we get clarification on that issue. Until then, we don't know. But I think I do agree that it's hard to imagine that there would be really an objection to that use, seeing all the other multifamily in the area. The question is more on the appropriate process. Is this an allowed use and therefore just a special permit, or is it a zoning change? And that's the question we need to answer. So,
just what will be the process for getting that answered? Are we gonna go
I will
back to all the?
consult with town council and see
Okay.
if we can get clarification on it.
So I guess I'd like to make a motion to continue this
Second?
to the 19th at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock?
Sorry, you're gonna really roll the whole meeting forward.
You know, that's okay. Those things happen.
Okay.
That is also in line with us wanting to kind of get the ZBA on a schedule of one meeting a month, and therefore we will have one meeting and long ones. So we need a second for that time and date.
So who seconded that, Dave?
All in favor? Okay, thank you. We are
Very much,
continued.
appreciate time.
On our agenda, thank you everybody for showing up on this. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes to approve, and then we can all go home.
Okay.
We already took care of yours.
Yeah, we already
just
took
have
care of the bulk
one-
of those.
These are
We
the
have
minutes from
June
the last-
20th, 2018, and July 11th
Oh,
of
the
2018.
June one isn't on the,
I don't remember seeing.
The June one is not on the list. I figured we had, not having read the July minutes, I figured we would have approved it in July, but then I read it and realized that not enough people that actually sat on it were there, so we postponed it. So my mistake that it wasn't on the list. I think
I'll let it slide.
I think it'll be okay. So, assuming everybody has poured through these already, and I can't find my June 20th ones.
You should have them highlighted in yellow.
I know, they're somewhere. I've been traipsing through so many sets of papers. Okay.
All right, thanks, Freddie.
Oh, here they are. Got them. Okay, yep. Does anybody have any comments, questions, amendments to the June 20th? Excuse me, ladies? Ladies? Do you mind taking that outside so we can continue without the murmur for the hearing? Thank you. Okay. June 20th meeting?
I had no comments on the June 20th meeting.
I was not present, so I will abstain.
Okay. Paul, Debbie, any comments? I don't have any comments on it.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for June 20th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Paul? In favor?
Yes.
And David abstains. Okay. July 11th. What? Okay.
I noticed, I think a typo on the top of page 3 of the minutes for July 11. Mr. Williams inquired as to how abandoned property is handled, I think, instead of abandoned. Other than that, I had no comments.
I have no comment because I was not present.
Like that's an excuse.
I'm not gonna make comments, but
I was there,
They
but
might
I
be
have no
relevant.
comments.
Debbie, you're good?
Yeah, good. Mhm.
David?
I'm fine with them, yeah.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the July 11th minutes as amended?
I move that we approve the July 11th, 2018 minutes as amended.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
and I'll just,
Paul abstains.
Yours.
I think that's it.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone want to second that? Do we want to have a discussion about it? Should we?
Not want to have discussion.
Public comment?
Do we have comment? Mike, you want to comment on adjourning? You're not allowed. Who's seconding it? Dave? Did you second?
second.
All right, do we have a vote? Aye, yeah, good, done. Thank you.